Whenever feasible, one should always try to eat the root. Would you join me at the table?
Welcome to Eat The Rudecast, a podcast about television's Hannibal and the work of Thomas Harris. I'm Cooper, and with me I have...
Hi, it's Miko.
And this is Ophelia.
And we're talking about Silence of the Lambs tonight. And honestly, if you have not seen Silence of the Lambs, you have no business listening to this podcast right now. So shut it off. Go and watch Silence of the Lambs. You could have enjoyed our banter through Manhunter and Red Dragon.
You're not
without
allowed
seeing
to
the
listen
movies.
to this without watching the movie.
Yes. Ophelia's
You're not
right.
allowed.
You are actually not allowed to listen to this podcast.
Turn it off right now.
Yeah.
We'll know.
We will know.
We'll find you.
And really, after watching this again,
Yeah.
if anyone out there gets a chance to watch this on the big screen, if your first introduction to this movie was through
A
video,
little TV. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
a little TV, not
VHS on a
even if
tiny
you have
TV,
a big
like
screen TV, exactly. No,
Tiny TV.
go. Usually around Halloween, I'm sure at this time of the year there's probably some
Like indie
Theater-
places
yeah.
that will do it.
Go watch it on the big screen, because watching this again reminded me of just how amazing this is on the big screen.
Yeah, we're going to make no bones about it. This is going to be a love fest.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess it's fitting considering that some of you out there thought we were way too harsh on poor little defenseless Red Dragon.
Oh, were we bullies?
We were bullies. We bullied poor Brett Ratner and his vision.
His vision?
Well, his vision was basically he put on Jonathan Demme glasses and looked at it like that.
Yes, and apparently he did not wear the Jonathan Demme glasses
Not
very
through
well.
the entire
No, maybe he had
movie.
backwards. I don't know. What?
So yeah, we all admitted there is some enjoyment to be gotten out of Red Dragon. So-
It's true. We did say that. It's some of the cinematography is good. The production design is pretty good. I'm still not too happy with the
there's
weird
there's a
dungeony
lot to be unhappy with.
way of getting to the cell. But not that the costumes look terrible. I just didn't think that they were trying to be
See,
sort of period.
that's what it
but
is.
not
The poster, Red Dragon. It's not that the costumes look terrible. Miko Technication.
quite. Right, there you go.
They're just not good.
Everything. I think everything just fell short.
Fell short. And you really, if you watch Red Dragon independent of Silence of the Lambs, you might be able to enjoy it thoroughly. The problem is when you put it next to this other thing, Red Dragon is like the moon. It's all reflected light from Silence of the Lambs, which is clearly the sun.
Yes,
Because,
clearly.
Watching this, and I think we are all on the same page here, this is a nearly perfect film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is hands down one of the greatest horror films ever made.
Yeah.
It is one of the greatest suspense movies. It's certainly the best example of the serial killer genre. Seven tried really hard but fell short in a lot of ways. This is a superior film to so much, and there's a reason that it has such tremendous staying power. And for all the shit Anthony Hopkins' performance gets in the future,
Yeah.
it really is not reflective at all about what he is doing in this movie.
No.
Because he's not
No.
over the top and craziness.
If he had continued with this level in the other films, we probably would not have criticized it. It's almost like, oh, you like that? Well, you'll like it even more if I turn it up. But
Though this Hannibal Lecter would not have worked to carry the film Hannibal. You put this subtle Hannibal Lecter next to Mason fucking Verger, you can't do that.
Yeah, that's true. So you kind of had to do it.
Yeah.
But once you turned it up, though, we all seemed to kind of go, ooh, I don't know. It's a little too much.
I love Okie Dokie Hannibal.
You do.
I do. I have no issues with his performance in Hannibal. It's definitely different than this Hannibal, but it's the difference between this Hannibal is calm and in prison.
Mm-hmm.
That Hannibal's out in the world experiencing the fruits of his amazing escape that we see in this film.
But what about the Red Dragon Hannibal once we get to the...
Well, that Hannibal's angry.
Oh, he's angry.
Well,
he mellowed? between
in the years
Red Dragon
and in the years in book time between Red Dragon and Silence of the Lambs, he has mellowed. He's
not
realized
the 30 seconds between Graham leaving and Chilton.
What's her name?
What's her name?
One thing that we talked about with Scott Coletti in our Manhunter episode is whether or not Thomas Harris has any feelings whatsoever about this material. And one of the things I read when I was doing research for tonight's episode is that he has at least seen Silence of the Lambs and very much liked it. He felt like he was at the center of this maelstrom of publicity, and he was unaware of it. Mm-hmm. So he watched Silence of the Lambs, enjoyed it very much, but he did wait for a long time, and it was because of he was reminded of something that John Le Carre talked about, where once he saw his characters in film, it was as though they were stolen from him, because they were no longer the characters he had in his head. And that's the problem with a good performance. Mm-hmm. You know, when he sits down and watches Anthony Hopkins play this role, or Brian Cox play the role, probably not Gaspard, but we will withhold judgment. He could easily, the next time he sits down to write a Hannibal Lecter story, that's all he sees. And I get that totally.
Yeah, because he has a different vision in his head of who he's writing.
Yeah.
I read that too, that he was afraid to change those images in his head. But I remember, I think he actually wound up setting the actors each like a case of wine. Mm-hmm. He was just, he was very appreciative of what they did for this, and they were surprised because being a recluse, he was. You
don't hear from Thomas
Harris. Don't hear from Thomas Harris, so that said a lot that he, actually reached out in some way to them.
I want to start with Howard Shore's amazing score, because as we're setting up this film with Clarice running through the woods on the training
course
track, we hear the beautiful themes that Howard Shore wrote for this, and he's a tremendous talent. He wrote the Lord of the Rings score, lots of different things. One of my favorite, the Ed Wood score, is Howard Shore.
I love the Ed Wood score.
So evocative, and this is a really unique score, and it fits with the film so well, because it's Miko, you have said it's a bit overblown at times, but that was the time of the film.
Yes. That swell, that thing that we kept experiencing in Manhunter.
Yes.
Where there was just sort of like this all of a sudden really intense and growing and crescendo. Yeah. And it's like, okay.
Well, at least this one, it was an orchestral score.
Yeah. But it worked. Yeah. And even though I had rewatched it like a month or so ago, 2 months ago, and that made me giggle when that part of the music came in, but in no way detracts from the experience. It was just like an observation, like, I don't remember that being a little overly dramatic there, but it's beautiful, and it doesn't seem so oddly dated.
Yeah, very much so.
And which takes you out of your enjoyment when you're hearing it in something like Manhunter.
And what's really crazy about this film is this was an almost no budget, sure failure film.
Oh yeah.
Dino De Laurentiis famously gave the rights to Orion for this because of the poor showing of Manhunter.
Yeah, he was done. Washed his hands of it.
When, we watched the trailer for this afterwards, you watch that trailer, you don't see this movie.
Oh, no. No. Yeah, they were definitely going for schlocky horror movie.
It's a Cinemax movie. It's you figure there's going to be titillation, there's going to be gore, there's going to be a monster. He's probably going to get, and it's really amazing looking at it through the lens of what the production company and even the filmmakers thought they were making.
Now, the story of this coming to screen is fascinating. And what's interesting is that people involved with it at the very beginning read the book and like, I need to make a movie out of this.
Yeah.
Immediately. Gene Hackman
beat
Jodie Foster.
Rights. Yeah, Jodie Foster, as soon as she read the book, she went to buy the rights and found out Gene Hackman already owned them.
Jodie Foster did?
Jodie
Yeah.
Foster wanted to buy the rights, yeah.
Oh.
And then Gene Hackman wanted to direct it and play
Andy.
either Hannibal or Jack Crawford.
Yeah.
But he apparently watched his performance in Mississippi
Yes.
Burning at the Oscars and felt that he was not interested in making as dark a film again,
Yeah.
coming off of Mississippi Burning.
Yeah. So they were in the middle of development with the script when that happened. So when he dropped it, they thought, "Oh my God, this is it."
Yeah.
We're like halfway through a script, but the writer was told, "Don't stop."
And then to
Don't
go
stop,
to
keep
Jonathan Demme, the director of Something Wild, a very silly, awesome comedy. If you
Yeah.
haven't seen Something Wild, definitely check it out. If only for John
Married
Waters'
to the
cameo in it, and Married to the Mob. His background is comedy.
Oh yeah, they were so worried when he came on this.
Yeah.
Because he's like comedy and rock and roll documentaries was his like lexicon, and kind of still is.
Yeah.
You know, he's done some dramas since then that have been very successful, like Philadelphia. But you look at his, his entire
Filmography,
IMDb. There's so many sort of like documentaries and lighthearted stuff. He's got an amazing course of work.
Yeah.
But coming into this, people were like, "How is he going to do this?" and they even said he was so jokey on the set that Jodie Foster was like terrified that it was going to be like jokes and hokey. And he was like, "Oh no, we're going to bring it."
Yeah.
When we turn it on. But that was just his personality. Very jokey
Jodie
on.
Foster was the second choice. It was originally Michelle Pfeiffer was his number one choice for Clarice.
Did you see the list of other people? They apparently auditioned 300 other women before coming back to Jodie Foster.
Considering that you are making a sequel.
Yeah.
That the number of people considered for these parts, for Crawford, for Clarice, for Hannibal Lecter, and to have everybody fit their parts so unbelievably perfect.
Yes. And none of them be the first choice.
Yeah, none of them. This is
them.
an example of a film being made that from the moment it was started filming was not what the filmmakers wanted to be making. And have it turn out perfect. And, it's funny, looking back, it's hard to remember that time when Anthony Hopkins wasn't this major, very well-respected Academy Award-winning star.
That is true. This is before a lot of those films.
Really, his most notable film up until this point was Elephant Man.
Yeah.
And that was famously why Jonathan Demme wanted him for the role. And he said, but my part in Elephant Man, he's a good man. And Demme said that Hannibal Lecter is a good man inside an insane brain.
Yeah. He wanted the good doctor that went bad.
Yeah.
I thought that was very interesting. And Hopkins was actually giving up on his Hollywood career, and he went back to the stage. He had sort of a series of sort of mediocre films, and he said that, well, maybe this isn't for me.
Sure.
And they found him doing theater in London, and I'm so glad that they, pulled him out of that to do this and he did say it's like it turned his entire career around and opened him up to all these
Jodie's too.
Amazing, yeah. Jodie
again is an actress we think has been here forever because she sort of has been in Hollywood forever, but she was not a star until Silence of the Lambs made her.
She
a
had
star.
done. I think her big thing was The Accused.
Yeah,
was right before this. That's what she was well known for at this point, but still relatively young in her career at this time.
So from the opening of this film, you see the difference between this and Manhunter and Red Dragon.
Oh, yeah.
This movie is grungy. There's nothing flashy. There's nothing glitzy about anything here. From the cinder block walls in Quantico, the cluttered small offices, the fact that we meet our heroine covered in sweat stains and with her hair pulled up, though wearing pearl earrings.
Pearl earrings, yeah, I noticed that. Yeah, when she was, I was like, oh, we have some lovely earrings on as we're running through the obstacle course today.
And in one of my favorite shots in the film, they established the conflict for Clarice immediately by her getting into that elevator full of men,
full of the tall,
that are all
all
at least
taller,
a foot taller than her, and then getting out by herself.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And really, there's this movie is full of shorthand. This movie is full of exceptional storytelling. And this is one of the first examples of exceptional storytelling. We open with a character being chased, it looks like, and we know we're sitting down to watch a horror film. So,
Running
she's
through
being
the
chased.
woods,
Maybe
girl in
she's
the
being
woods.
pursued by
Right.
our killer. And then we find we get that hurt, agony, pain, love it signs.
Which is actually there.
Right, yeah.
It is
And-
actually on the course.
And we follow her into this very metaphorical elevator that she gets out of alone to go and find her mentor.
Yeah.
I liked how the guy who was bringing her, like, the message from Jack Crawford was sweaty and looked like completely put out that he had to keep up with her to get the
He
message.
had to
Yeah.
huff it all the way down
out
there to
there.
Clarice.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, he's covered in sweat too when you see him.
Yeah. Exactly. We got to watch the run through the woods with the largest opening cards I've ever seen.
Oh, those
The
title
font,
cards are
those
amazing.
title cards are like they're yelling
that's
at you.
that's like stagecoach lettering. You know, it fills the screen.
Oh, yes.
Never noticed it before this viewing. Now and then after you pointed that out, I was like, stop yelling at me.
Exactly. I felt like they were yelling the cast
So
at
it was
me.
the caps lock texting
All caps.
of films.
Almost.
Big blocky caps.
But it did really, I mean, there's so much gravity at the beginning of this. Everything from those black, white outlined letters in the opening, her running through the woods. After I really looked at the rest of what she was wearing and really drank it all in. Why she was wearing those earrings made more sense. It seemed
It's for her
odd.
to emphasize her femininity.
Yeah.
in a
in a very male dominated
where she otherwise would just look like everyone else except for the ponytail.
Yeah.
Or it could have been something that her dad gave her and she just never takes them off.
Very
Yeah.
true. Yeah, absolutely.
She does wear them, I think,
Or
throughout the
something from her
entire
mother.
movie. She
Yeah.
usually
Yeah.
has these little pearl earrings on.
And it could be that sort of status thing that Hannibal likes to dig at her for, that she's trying to advance herself. So she's got to kind of put that on as a, look at me, I'm wearing something nice and fancy,
Yeah.
rather than just being, poor.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
not
oh,
being
yeah,
able to afford something
absolutely.
like
Yeah.
that.
A lot of her costume is like that throughout the movie. It's all about her trying to look like something she's not on a number of levels.
Yeah.
Looking above the socioeconomic realm that she came from, being female in a male dominated world, being
And
very
being
young,
female, poor and young.
and
Yeah.
young, and being with all these very experienced people and trying to look older and more experienced. A lot of her suit choices and things like that don't look quite right on her because she's trying to look a little bit older, a little bit more experienced, and a little bit more upper class
And
than
could
she
be
really
thrift
is.
store finds.
Yeah.
That makes me think of the one moment where I think we see really pure Clarice is that little bit of pajama top we see her wearing. It's sort of like long underwear pajamas when she's sitting with our Ardelia.
Oh,
talking
yeah, when they're
about
talking about
the
yeah.
booklet. She's wearing pajamas.
Yeah.
And like pajamas that have been washed a lot. So it feels very lived in, and everything in this movie feels real. It
Yeah.
feels there.
It's the brilliance of Colleen Atwood.
Yeah.
And I think I really wish she had gone on to do Red Dragon. I think it would have helped the look a lot, especially since Christy Zayek also went over, the production designer. So it would have been nice to have that team continue. And this is someone whose career is just extensive, and the way she can just grasps hold of characters is amazing. And you really get to see this in this. That's why Clarice looks like this.
Yeah.
It's like just the costume designer really made some excellent choices.
Going back to the economy of story, we learn so much before the dialogue even really starts here. When we get into Crawford's office, we see the bulletin board that really shows us what we're looking for, shows us the grisliness of the crimes in, again, completely non-flashy ways that look like they're legitimately crime scene photos. Yeah. And then we're introduced to this version of Jack Crawford. It's the third Jack Crawford we have seen in this post Hannibal series fourth Jack Crawford we've seen in total.
Yes.
And Scott Glenn is really very, very good as Jack
yes.
Crawford.
He's very good at Jack Crawford.
He's much warmer than the other Crawfords.
You know, you're right. But I think also it's like, you know, they eliminate a lot of his backstory and they seem to sort of concentrate on this whole idea that I think he likes Clarice. And feels that there's, you know, a lot of potential here, but he understands I have to put this person in this situation to get what I need to get done. So instead of jacking up the law, Jack, I think we get a little bit more
this
of a
is
more
chess
human.
Player.
Yeah, this is chess player Jack, where I think he actually does. I think maybe care a little bit more about the people and what's going on, but still has to do his job.
Yes, indeed. I want to talk very much about the talking directly to the camera. This is something that is so
important in this film.
It's so important in the film, and we see it almost never.
Oh, yeah.
And it's because, I mean, there's a number of reasons we don't see it. It's because it does make you as an audience member uncomfortable when someone is looking essentially at you.
Yes.
But what it does here is it very firmly puts us in the comfortable position of being Clarice, who is the protagonist of the film. It also puts us in the uncomfortable position of being Hannibal Lecter.
Yes.
And we see it almost immediately in this scene between Crawford and Clarice. Where,
they start that close-up coverage right off the bat with their conversation.
And the do you spook easily? I think it's almost a welcoming of the audience into this story. Do you spook easily? No, because I'm going to tell you a scary story.
Oh, yeah. And even the, you don't want Hannibal Lecter getting into your head.
Yeah.
How, they're basically like he's looking almost at you. It's like, oh, you don't want him in your head.
When it's so great, reading these books, if you had no experience of the films, you have an entire book to understand what type of malevolence Hannibal Lecter is capable of and why you don't want him in your head. But going in just into a film, and most people hadn't seen Manhunter at this point. Yeah. So the way they build up Hannibal Lecter here, it's really unsettling. And then it has probably the greatest transition in any movie ever. And it's never forget what he is and what's that. And cut to Chilton, not even seeing Chilton, but at the asylum saying, oh, he's a monster.
A true psychopath.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful because the sentence continues and they answer, and it's her listening to, and then you get Chilton's overblown, lovely, self-centered narcissism.
The way he uses his mouth, Anthony Held is just like,
I love it.
When he's talking about how much of a fun city Baltimore can be.
While he's flirting with her in that creepy way.
He's almost smacking.
Yes.
It's unsettling what he does with his mouth, especially in a film about cannibalism.
It's very creepy.
He has the creepiest mouth in the film.
Unsettling. Even creepier than
yeah.
Yes. Well, that whole
Which
time
is my favorite noise to make.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, I love doing that. I had somebody I used to work with at the hospital, and she hated it.
You just go up behind someone and just lean into their ear.
I don't even remember why I did it at work one day, but it bothered her so badly that I just...
It's unnerving.
I would insert it into our conversations, and it would just bother her like nothing else.
Apparently, Jonathan Demme hated it, but Anthony Hopkins kept pushing him on it.
I'm glad he did it, because it's one of my favorites.
Oh, yeah.
I want to point something out that we have no idea what it means or if it means anything. There's a painting on Chilton's wall.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We
stopped to look at this freeze frame.
We paused it. We looked at it carefully. It appears to be a church on fire, surrounded by
people lying on the ground
Yeah.
and casually walking by.
Some people walking, some people laying on the ground.
It's very unsettling. I did a Google reverse image search from the 1080p HD version of it, and I couldn't find anything.
Oh, wow.
I'm curious if anyone knows anything, or if it's just like the set designer's sister is a painter, and this is going in Chilton's office, because that happens on films.
Yeah.
But it was an unsettling thing and a curious thing, considering Hannibal's affection for churches
Right.
under distress.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Church is being destroyed.
Chilton immediately negates the value of Clarice by saying that she's a pretty young woman to turn Hannibal on, and are you ever his taste?
Oh, I
so
know.
to speak.
I know.
Aren't I clever? He's a cannibal.
Yeah, exactly. I made a funny.
Yeah.
I made a funny.
So unlikable.
Oh, I know. And the whole time he's hitting on her too, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh.
And then as soon as he gets
Rebuffed.
kind of rejected, not even outright rejected, he starts being nasty.
oh, he's a dick.
Nasty.
Yeah,
You-
he totally is.
You might have saved me
Save
the
me
trip.
the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
But then,
that's
and
a
Clarice,
dick.
again, you see what she's had to deal with, because this is clearly someone who's used to, okay, well, I'll turn on the charm, I'll flirt a little bit, just so you actually will leave me alone or let me do what I need to.
Mm-hmm.
When she said, I would have missed the pleasure of your company.
She's
sir."
totally faking it.
Oh yeah.
She's so faking it.
I think one of my favorite lines here is when Chilton goes, he thinks I'm his nemesis.
And
Oh,
he's
yes.
so proud of it.
I know. I
Yeah.
love this line. I love that line. And if you kind of paid attention to her face, she kind of doesn't believe it
Right.
a little bit. Because I was like, oh, even she knows it's bullshit.
Yes, Nemesis generally has to be as powerful
As powerful
as
or-
the
exactly. It is.
Maybe you
It's
don't understand.
hilarious.
That word did not mean what you think it
It
means.
means exactly that he thinks so much of himself that
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
on par with Hannibal.
And also, maybe it was a look of, you really want to be his
yeah.
nemesis?
You're so
Like,
proud of this.
why are you proud of being the nemesis of a cannibal? I'm confused as to why you're happy
Exactly.
when you say that word.
When we get into the dungeon just before we meet Hannibal, I don't understand this choice, but I was listening to the commentary. Jonathan Demme was talking about how he and the sound designer sweated over this scene for hours, wanting it to sound like a submarine.
Yeah.
And you hear sonar, you hear basically submarine noises. I don't get it.
They wanted
it seems odd.
They wanted the idea of you going down into the depths of hell. I think they explained it a little better in some of the other stuff I read, because that came up. But it came up later after they talked about how they wanted it to look like they were just continually going down
That
into
descent
the
is
depths of
impressive,
hell,
yeah.
and that it was this never-ending
The worst of the
circular
worst
journey,
criminals.
exactly down into it. And I think to give that idea that they were going deep and that they were, they wanted that submarine sound to be very subtle in the background, so that it gave you this idea that you were.
It's not subtle. It's obvious.
It's
and
obvious.
it's obvious to a point. It's like, okay, I know all the machines you've got in there.
Yeah.
What the hell is making that sound?
It's going maybe a step too far, because I think
step.
visually it was enough.
Well, and that turn
Yeah.
is beautiful. When we go, we walk in with Clarice, and then the camera pushes beyond her, and then we are Clarice. We're looking at the bars, we're looking at the consoles and the monitors, we're looking at the
They do that
entire,
great 360.
arsenal
Yeah.
there at the end of the hall.
Everything
the
it
cage.
takes.
Yeah, and then we come back to Frankie Faison's very warm, very genuine Barney saying, you'll be fine. I'll be watching.
Right. And even just before that, once they get to the end of their descent and they walk into that red light,
Yeah,
and the last conversation she has with Chilton when he gets all like bitchy.
haughty.
Yeah.
Because, he would have saved me the walk. They're bathed in this red light.
Yeah.
So it literally is like a descent into hell, because once they get to the end, bathed in that red light, then she gets through the gate into that sort of starkly lit room. And then we do that wonderful 360 where we see all the stuff in there. And it's that great POV again, where you almost feel like you're Clarice, like, oh my God.
And with all
I'm
the
gonna go in
build-up
and
about
talk-
Hannibal Lecter at this point, with
yeah.
all the rules, with all the
Stay to the right.
with not seeing the picture of what he did to the nurse, but knowing it was enough to freak Clarice out.
yeah, then
Right. I
that-
loved the way that they didn't show us that.
exactly. So did I.
A
That
lesser movie would have handed it to
Right,
you. and you would-
exactly.
yeah.
or would have done
shoved it in
some
your face.
cheesy insert shot.
Yeah.
And no, let our imaginations just run wild, you know. And then Chilton's little, his pulse never got above 89,
Psychological
even while
when he
thriller.
ate
her tongue.
And that's again, Chilton being entirely too proud of himself, too proud of his pet that he's got in the dungeon. It's a stunning setup.
Oh, and then it's wonderful. Then after all of that terrible Chilton stuff, to have warm and friendly Barney just
Yes.
give you all that comfort before you go out.
I want to mention that the first inmate we see that she passes, he's sort of at the bars leaning at him and with a big grin on his face going, hi. This is Chuck Aber, who was a regular on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And by regular, I mean he was in over 100 episodes of
my
Mr.
gosh.
Rogers. And I remember the rumor. See, before the internet, you would hear these rumors like, that guy's in Mr. Rogers. And you're like, no
way.
That guy's not on Mr. Rogers. But yes, he was on Mr. Rogers.
And it makes sense because all of this was shot in Pittsburgh, and that's where Mr. Rogers was shot. So
And we're not talking about multiple MiGs in the next cell. That
No.
He's not on
This is
Mr.
this is the not so
The first
The less verbose.
the less verbose,
The less, let's say, productive.
yes, the grinning criminal. It's just sort of
That gets a closed
The
eye
less
smile and a head shake. Look at the blood.
But yeah, Mr. Rogers was shot at QED in Pittsburgh. I got to walk through the sets.
Really?
It was really cool.
Very cool. The first appearance of Hannibal Lecter is one of the most frightening things.
What a great choice.
To walk down that hall and, Lecter has his back turned in Manhunter. He's lying down. We see the top of his head in Red Dragon. To have the first appearance of this horrible creature
standing at attention with perfect posture,
be this
smiling.
demure and friendly looking and intense looking man just standing there in the light, waiting
for you,
expecting you.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think Hopkins wanted it to look like that Hannibal knew everything.
Yeah.
That was going to be so unnerving.
And it
that
is.
He is going to look at you like he knows all.
It's so unsettling to have him just there.
Oh, completely. Especially after that long walk, they start that scene in actually in such a much better set than Red Dragon, because it looks more realistic. It looks more.
Well, this set looks like a building. The other one looks like Walt Disney Presents Hannibal Lecter stuff.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking too. It's like hyper stylized and looks sort of like we're gonna do Universal Monsters down here after this show is done.
They're shooting it at Hammer Horror Studios.
Right, exactly. Whereas this seemed more natural. They matched it to the building, which I kept recognizing it, and I was like, I've been there.
So what is it?
It's the old Allegheny Jail in downtown Pittsburgh.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And when I first moved there, I was driving downtown and I was a little lost, and I made a left, and there's like this gigantic castle looking building. And I was like, this is so cool. And I almost went down a one-way street because I was so enamored. And it has this really cool stone bridge between the two buildings. And I found out they call it the Bridge of Sighs or something like that. And it's based on a bridge I think Venice.
In Florence,
yeah.
I think.
No, I think it might be
Venice.
It's Venice, I think.
I don't know. I just read a Dan Brown book. Don't make fun of me. And they go over the Bridge of Sighs in that book, which is really funny. I was reading Dan Brown's Inferno, and I was reading the version of it with the illustrative stuff, because Dan Brown writes very specific pieces of art into his story. And the beginning of it takes place in Florence. And so all this stuff I'm seeing are the haunts from Hannibal, both the series and the
that's right.
film.
So it's all coming
So
together.
I get to see the Duomo. I get to see, what Florence looks like. The where Palazzo Vecchia, where Will gets shot in the series. A scene takes place there. It's really cool. And it was great to see that from another perspective and to be able to just see these places and to find out that gorgeous building that Bedelia walks in front of in the first episode of season 3 is the Duomo.
Yeah.
We just don't see the famous dome on top.
Yeah. When I was watching that, I kept going, I know this building. And the name kept like, I think I thought it was the Doja, but it's not. It's the Duomo.
Right.
So I was close. It was a D word.
And it's fitting that here, one of Hannibal's drawings is the Duomo, seen from the Belvedere, which a lot of people like to speculate is Hannibal pointing out to Clarice where Buffalo Bill lives.
Buffalo Bill lives
because he lives in Belvedere, Ohio. So it's one of those things that's a bit too coincidental to be not foreshadowing.
Yeah.
But it's not obvious.
Or it just might be like, oh, it's a fun little like, hey, let's throw this in here and see if anybody notices. Not that, he's really trying, to like give anything away that because he hasn't really seen, much about it other than what's been in the news.
But he does know what happened to Benjamin Raspail at this point. And if the stuff in the news makes this killer look similar to whoever did this to Benjamin Raspail,
he may have had an inkling that it was this person from the very beginning.
So at that point, you figure maybe he's just playing.
Right.
It's just like, oh, Belvedere.
Yeah. Just in case.
Have a look.
It comes up later.
The other unique decision in this film is to shoot in incredibly tight and varying close-ups.
Yes.
It's also something that puts you as an audience member off kilter and makes you a little uncomfortable because you're not used to being so close to people.
No, coverage is never done like this. Right. Usually you're lucky to get, it's usually shoulders, kind of framed that way. This goes into ever increasing close-ups. Often you'll have basically forehead and chin cut off, which is amazing because Hopkins' eyes are mesmerizing.
Oh, yeah.
You get to see the fear in Jodie Foster's face, and you get to feel like you are there. This unusual coverage choice was the most brilliant thing ever. And really, I think it really made this movie.
Yeah.
It really did. It was a very strong choice to make, and I'm glad that they went with it.
There's, when you think of Anthony Hopkins as being over the top as Hannibal Lecter, I want to point out little things that he does in here that are so stunningly subtle. Like when he notices that Clarice is a trainee and he says, Jack Crawford sent a trainee to me. And he sort of stumbles over the me, like he can't even believe it enough to finish this sentence. Like how appalling.
How rude.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I'll get you, Jack.
Exactly. I'll get you for this.
Someday you'll have a heart attack when I've escaped.
Right. And that whole way that he analyzes all of that.
Yeah.
She's already terrified when she comes in. As I was saying before, seeing her long walk and seeing the chair at the end of the hallway and that feeling of, oh my God, I have to get to the chair. And then she gets there and she's trying so hard to be a grown up.
Yeah. And before that, she has to deal with Miggs saying, I smell your cunt.
Yes.
And that's
totally
almost
unnerving.
a dweller on the threshold thing. That's a turn back now thing. And she pushes through it to find the far more genial, yet far more dangerous person at the other end.
Behind his plexiglass.
Yeah.
Yeah, with that illusion of there being nothing between you.
Yeah, which is really frightening.
Yeah, because there are times when he comes up to it, there's that like, oh, it looks like
how he comes up and he smells and sniffs her.
Yeah, up to the hole.
Which I thought was interesting right after what Mig said, for him to, the first thing he does is to try to smell her. I feel like it was meant to throw her off.
Oh, it
yeah.
was completely
Well,
meant to
that's Hannibal Lecter saying, "I know you."
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying you were saying he was being much more genial. I still feel like he was sticking his finger in it. Like she
no.
had like
no.
I think just the appearance.
It's the
thing.
appearance.
It's like
being
okay,
genial.
there's this guy who's yelling obscenities, and then there's this erudite guy on the other side. Okay, he's going to be better,
But he's just as.
But he's worse.
Oh, yeah.
He's much worse at sticking.
And that's what makes it so scary.
Yeah.
You know, even though he's there standing very, I love that very sort of awkward, but
he's got his chest puffed out like
Yeah.
a bird.
It's very military
Yeah.
stance.
Yeah.
He has
the
a
arms
military stance.
straight beside his side, that 3/4 kind of looking over, and that smile.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have to repost that GIF with all
the stuff on
anime posters
Yes,
on the wall.
You should.
on
'cause
this
it's
episode.
so great.
Just
So great.
appalling and stunning. And
I still want one that has the kitten with the hang in there on the wall. I so want a Hannibal cell with that poster on the wall.
so the story I told about Anthony Hopkins making fun of Jodie Foster's accent actually came from rehearsals. And Jodie, when she initially came in, she did almost no accent at all. And Jonathan Demme's like, well, you just sound like Jodie Foster. This isn't what and he had been thinking, okay, well, I'm not getting who I want for this role. And now she just sounds like, Californian Jodie Foster. And she's like, oh, I just was doing a very subtle accent. He's like, can you
Turn it
up the West Virginia a little bit there? And then she turned that on, and then it was Clarice Starling. And so having Anthony Hopkins immediately make fun of that accent, just for an actress going up against Anthony Hopkins, who has this illustrious career, that's very serious, illustrious career. I mean, how much more intimidating can you be?
Yeah, she said that it was like I thought when she talks about it that it happened in the scene when they were actually shooting, and that he started to do that, and she actually got honestly angry.
Yeah.
And so Demi was like afterwards was like, we're using it because that, and she realized afterwards, and actually was like, that really worked.
It really worked.
That really worked. That was brilliant.
And he starts immediately with, you think you can dissect me with his blonde too? It's so exaggerated. And when he winks as he's looking through he takes the paperwork and he sort of leans on the glass and just gives her a wink.
And I love how first he licks his finger to turn the page, and after he looks at her and just winks.
Yeah. And
it's like, that's so creepy.
And at the same time, it is fairly charming. And I think this is what really sells the paradox of Hannibal Lecter and the true danger of Hannibal Lecter is you do like him. And, that's what I think Anthony Hopkins actually got concerned about, that between this film and Hannibal. And it's why they held off for so long, was because he really felt like people liked him too much. People were too interested. And Demi tells a story about how his wife, Anthony Hopkins, made a big show going to bite her, and she produced her neck for him to bite. So it's very much the Dracula, the eroticism of it that you wouldn't expect, which is uncomfortable and weird, but also makes him into that anti-hero that you really like.
And it's probably why it works so well.
Yeah.
Because you already have a serial killer in this movie that
you're not going to
like. Yeah, so it's kind of a nice sort of bookend to it, to have the one that's rather abhorrent. And just everything about that serial killer seems so much of a turnoff of, no, this is a really, they're both brutal killers, but who they are, one is not a charmer. One has to use sort of brute force and sort of tricking people. Whereas what's so ultimately sort of wonderfully sinister and dastardly about Hannibal is that he can charm you.
Yeah.
That he is probably your best friend before he kills you and eats you.
Yeah, up until the point.
Exactly. You are having a wonderful dinner party with him or whatever it is, a conversation. You're talking about art and music, and next thing you know, you're on the table and you're dead.
Yeah.
But I love that about it, that charm. And that's what we love about Mass's Hannibal.
Yes.
You know, that he is able to do that and not seem, you know, while I still like the Brian Cox Hannibal, he has a rough hewn, we see him as a harsher killer. Like you can imagine him being more brutal but it's Hopkins really does that. Wow. You would really not know it was coming. And that is scary.
Absolutely.
And you see that here, you know, he's trying to disarm her. He's trying much better charmer than Chilton.
Well, yes.
Right.
And what's funny is how he switches from the disarming to, you know what, I'm bored with you.
Yeah.
So let me tell you what I really think. And he does the Rube speech is one of my favorite speeches from film history. And the way he delivers it, it's incredible. And to actually ramp down the power of delivery as you're going through a speech is so antithetical to what you expect, to go to almost the silent
yes
at the end. It's amazing. And seeing what it does to Clarice, who we're already very protective of after Miggs, after the bullshit with the with the other guys, with Chilton, and he's so dismissive of her at that point. He does the this is where the Chianti lies,
yeah,
which it's been challenged as why would Hannibal Lecter pronounce it Chianti, which
making fun
is because
of her.
he's making fun of Clarice.
Yeah. That, you wouldn't even know how to pronounce this properly.
Right.
Because you're this, West Virginia Rube.
Was your father a coal miner, dear?
Yeah. Oh, it's great. And they push in and you get the intensity of his eyes and he gets quieter. And I was thinking of that. Well, I was like, I love how he never blinks. And it came up in some of the interviews with him that was a choice.
He blinks only when it serves the scene.
Exactly. He's deliberate, like a reptile. And it's so, even when he blinks, you're like, oh, that doesn't seem
he's not moistening his eye. No.
And they push in and his eyes are, and they do a great lighting in the way he walks forward in the cell.
Yeah.
Because he's lit and then he goes through darkness and his eyes go dark for a moment and then he comes back into the light.
It's very inconsistently lit.
Yeah. There's like moments where you can't see his eyes and it's almost like glimpses of this dark part of him. And then when they pull, and he's got those sort of clear, blue-green eyes and he's getting quieter. And then he talks about the Chianti and the fava beans. And then he ends it with, the fly.
Oh yeah. Fly back to school now, Agent Starling.
Fly.
I think it's interesting that it was a Chianti in the movie. In the book, it was a big Amarone.
I wouldn't have worked as well.
Well, most people don't know what Amarone is.
Yeah.
And was it you that was telling me that Chianti and fava beans someone was telling me that it would mess with antipsychotic medication?
The liver and fava beans and Chianti could possibly kill somebody who's on MAOI inhibitors.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Yeah. It was like a tidbit that came up in research that it's got something in it in all of them that if you put all of those together, you would get so much of it that it could kill somebody.
So the thought was that theoretically it's Hannibal saying that he was not taking any sort of inhibitors. He was not on any
MAOI inhibitors, no antidepressants there. And it may, it's almost a dig at someone who is mentally ill. or dealing with depression. It's who's going to put those things together when they're looking at it? That's kind of like a subtle thing, but that's apparently something that someone had come up with.
The way Lecter gets agitated by it, it's really frightening.
Yeah.
It is.
He's on the glass
yelling for her to come back.
and he just talks so quickly and amplifies. It's sort of the opposite
Like yelling
of
what he was
the other
doing.
speech.
Yeah.
Because and when he was just like, I don't think he could manage again so soon, even if he is crazy, go now.
Yeah.
It's whoa intensity. And it's a great bonding moment. You see the beginning of mutual respect there. Because discourtesy is unspeakably ugly to Hannibal Lecter.
He was being rude.
He was tremendously rude.
Incredibly rude.
And he took care of it.
And he gets to swallow his own tongue for it.
Yeah.
He whispers to him all night.
All day. This happens in the course of a day. I
Yeah.
never realized that.
Yeah.
Crawford calls her at night
Yeah.
on after apparently a morning visit to Hannibal Lecter. We get our first flashback while Clarice is at the car crying over the
Walking
intensity
to her
of it.
old Pinto.
Oh, I think she actually mentions to Chilton that she has to get her report in that afternoon. So
Did she?
It must have been morning.
That was her excuse why she
To
couldn't
not
go out on the town in
Yeah.
Baltimore
Yes.
with him.
Exactly.
Thank God I have it easy out.
Oh no, they need me back at Quantico.
Yeah, they're waiting. I got,
I got stuff to do.
they get mad when you're late
Yeah.
there.
I gotta
Totally.
wash my hair.
Jack Crawford's gonna come down here.
I know. Yeah, and you don't want Crawford to come down here. That would be bad. I love this scene too. It's like
The flashback.
the way, because her coming out and being a little overwrought by what she's experienced. She's trying to put herself together. She's put that lovely sort of dowdy coat on that makes her sort of not look as together. And she goes and she looks at her car and it's like an instant reminder of who she is.
Yeah.
That this person is just totally like pressed on a very tender spot. And then she gets to go outside and look at her just crappy car, and just that walk to it. And this really took you somewhere with her.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to throw flashbacks into a film that actually don't connect to the film because they don't connect. It's a little bit of character info, but the flashbacks actually have nothing to do with the film.
Yeah.
And so to have these very minuscule momentary flashbacks and get so much of the relationship between Clarice and her father, and later when we're at the funeral home and see her saying goodbye to her dad at the casket. I mean, it's really so evocative. The girl they got to play Clarice doesn't look a whole lot like Jodie Foster, but at the same time, that's Clarice.
Yeah.
You don't doubt it. You don't feel weird, because sometimes you feel weird when it's a different actor playing a character at a different time in his life.
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't buy it.
It's not them.
Like not Tom Hanks in The End of the Green Mile. That guy.
That guy. But it's a nice, that waiting for her dad to come home
And sort of stalking him.
Yeah.
Like she's creeping around trying to sneak up on him, which, considering the way he died, he accidentally snuck up on some
when they were coming out of a drugstore. And that's what I liked about the way they shot that, because it had that same feeling, like here's
sort
her dad,
of predatory, but not.
coming out of, it's like, but it's just him coming home to her.
Yeah.
But knowing that that's basically what happened to him, is that he probably left his car and ran into these criminals as they were running out, and he probably died in front of his car.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, actually, no, he didn't. In the book,
No, he died in the hospital.
He died in the hospital.
Because he was strong.
He was
strong.
She tells Hannibal that later.
Yeah.
Over and over in the film, we see Clarice going through training. And this is actually shot in Quantico, which is really impressive. The FBI opened up their doors to this film, and they had John Douglas as an advisor on the film, and he basically is Jack Crawford at Quantico.
For reals.
There's an intense story where he wanted to really take the cast where they needed to go for these characters. And so he sat down with Scott Glenn and played for him some audio tapes of some killers who
I read about
would
this.
capture and torture people and record the tapes of it. And Scott Glenn said he got a minute in and basically lost his faith in humanity there. It changed him completely.
It stayed with him forever.
And it's why he immediately refused to return for Hannibal. It's why he's not in Red Dragon. And it's just he was so profoundly altered by making this film. He really couldn't bring himself there again.
Yeah, the stuff that he had to see when he went to their offices
Yeah.
and saw what they were working on, he said it changed him forever. He said the stuff you can't unsee.
And it's like, how could this not? How could it's being an actor, you get to inhabit these things, but you don't actually get up in there.
Yeah.
And this put him up in there.
And this is probably why all those actors who were up for this, so many people continually turned it down.
Yeah.
Even though it's not a gory movie, there's very little gore actually in it.
It's really only a few moments of gore.
Exactly. But the theme itself is so dark. A lot of people wanted nothing to do with it. But thankfully, it kept us from having things like Sean Connery as Hannibal. So.
Oh dear.
I'm okay with that.
Fascinating.
Yeah. That was one of the people that they wanted, was Sean
Trying
Connery.
to think of
I don't know.
1990 Sean Connery.
I don't know.
Brian Dennehy would have been wonderful.
Yes.
I'm on board with Team Brian Dennehy.
You are, aren't you?
As
They
the
approached-
number one, and Jeremy Irons was
Jeremy
up for it?
Irons would have been great, but he was Klaus von Bülow, and he didn't want to do another
Yeah, he turned it
dark film. Nicholson was approached. Jack Nicholson.
Oh, that would have been terrible.
Yeah. De Niro.
Also
Dustin
bad.
Hoffman.
No.
What?
No way. No.
I have Hoffman written down here.
Nope.
There were some really
Not okay with that.
interesting
Okay,
choices.
so that's Rain Man
Right.
era
Yeah.
Hoffman.
Yeah.
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 That's so
Absolutely not.
inappropriate.
No way.
Yeah. But
Don't like
still, I heard Sean Connery, and all I could hear was Hannibal Lecter's dialogue.
Good
in that-
evening, Clarice.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Well, I don't know what it says about me, but me watching this movie made me pursue forensics.
Well, no,
I was like,
yeah.
I want to do this.
I think that's probably true of a lot
of people,
especially young women seeing Clarice and seeing her, because she is an incredibly strong female character.
Oh yeah, and you were really not seeing a whole lot of that coming out of the 80s.
Oh no!
So,
And there was a lot of discussion at the time they were making this of, does Clarice have a boyfriend? And she's like, it takes place over like a week.
Yeah.
So even if Clarice does have a boyfriend, you might not see him. She's in the middle of a serial killer investigation.
Yeah.
And it's funny that the only glimpses we get into possibly maybe romantic stuff is with the bug guy.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because, I mean, she and Ardelia, it looks like they double dated them or invited them as a double date to the graduation, which I find wonderful because it's also, being a geek, I like it when the sexy girl is a geek, but it's also a very much a non
Stereotypical?
yes, flashy is almost what I'm thinking. It's not like, okay, they paired her up with, hunky FBI guy to
the way
help
they
her.
normally would have. Yeah.
It's she's making
She's standing alone.
what looks like a legitimate
career.
she doesn't need anyone for it.
She's fully developed all on her own, independent.
And that's especially knowing that her mother wasn't there and her father died young and she went through all these horrible things. She is such a well-rounded character.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why this character is actually very important.
Oh yeah.
In this film, even though when you start getting into the mid to late 80s, they were really trying to give women more lead roles in which they weren't always, being helped by men.
Yeah.
But it was really hard.
The raped victim.
Right, right.
Which Jodie has already played by this point in her career.
Yeah, they're either the girlfriend, the wife, the sidekick, a lot of that had been happening previously. And even though we were seeing some women carrying films, not a whole lot, and not this strong.
Right.
There was usually a lot of makeup, a lot of hair.
She's actually making it in a man's world.
Exactly.
It is a boys' club. The police, it still is.
When everything about this movie just continually hits that home, it reinforces.
When you see all the police officers hanging around, it's all men.
And how they're always sort of tall and towering over her, and she's just keeping as strong as she can and all of that. And that's why the FBI were so interested in letting them in and doing all this stuff, is they wanted more women in the FBI.
To help promote.
So they thought, what a great way of showing her excelling in Ardelia, also, in the FBI and performing like all the other men. And she got to shadow a woman FBI agent, Marianne Krause. Was the person at the FBI that helped Jodie, learn about everything, and they one of the documentaries I saw, like they talked to her.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it was like teaching her exactly how to do it and talking about what it was like. That there's so few women at the time and what you had to do, and she actually asked her when she comes out and she has the cry by the car. She asked Mary, Would you do this? Do you ever get so overwhelmed by what you see that you cry? And she's like, well, you get overwhelmed, but you do it alone. You do it in your car because of what we have to do. You can't do that in public. You can't do that in front of everybody, but you do have to let it out. You just find a place to do it by yourself.
I also like that she's not superhero FBI girl. We see these training moments where she gets shot in a simulation. She walks in, she's in control until she gets shot. And I love Clarice, where's your danger area? In the corner, sir. Did you look in the corner? No. That's why you're dead.
That's why you're dead.
And these things then reflect in our finale when we see her taking everything she has learned throughout the movie and applying it.
You can't help but thinking.
Corners.
It's Cracker Jack storytelling.
Is she looking in her corner? Is she looking in her corner? Oh my God, what just happened?
What about that corner? There's so many doors. Why are there so many doors?
Why are there so many doors? Yes, there are a lot of doors. And really, that should have tipped us all off that tiny house in Calumet City was not above the catacomb basement there.
Well, you never know.
We only know that because we have, hindsight's 20/20.
Well, yes.
Or we're just like a row house in New York, and we had a catacomb basement with creepy initials and years carved into the cement. I was like, oh my God, what do we live above? I had a creepy basement.
Were there bloody fingernails embedded?
No,
in them?
no fingernails. just what looked like some sort of cemetery markings.
Yeah,
that's lovely.
Maybe.
Yeah. I don't know. It used to be an old cornfield, so who knows? So
Ardelia calls Jack Crawford the guru. Did you notice that?
Yes, I noticed that.
I noticed it too.
That was fun.
Like, hey.
I'm glad they didn't go out of their way to call him that more than once because it's a silly title.
It was thrown in once, and it was very simple.
It was nice.
Her saying the guru's on the phone for you, that was cool.
Yeah.
I've never understood. This is one of my gripes with this movie. What manipulative game is Jack Crawford playing? Because Clarice doesn't need to know that Miggs is dead. And not only does she not need to know that doesn't need to be the beginning of their conversation. This guy that threw cum at you is dead. Because that almost sounds blamey.
Clarice doesn't need to know that. But we need to know that.
Yeah. But it feels clunky. This is in a film that is nearly perfect, the clunky stands out.
That's true.
And this
there is
always
some clunky.
Struck me as clunky.
Yeah, this is not a a film without some imperfections.
Maybe she wanted, or maybe Jack wanted to foster the relationship between her and Hannibal and say, hey,
Yeah.
your boyfriend did something good for you.
That's kind
Look what
of
he did.
He got you flowers.
I'm glad I'm not
He
the only one
totally
who's thinking
defended
that.
your honor.
Yeah.
Look at how awesome Hannibal is. You should go back and talk to him some more. Maybe you guys should sit down and have some coffee and talk about yourselves for a little while. Kind of sort of foster
Tell him
this
stories
relationship
about when you were young.
He's put writing down hearts with their initials in it in his journal.
Well,
Clarice and Hannibal.
this feels like exceedingly manipulative Jack. If we go along that line,
that's Jack.
I think this is a manipulative Jack.
That is Jack.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that comes up a lot in this. And as warm as he is, he has to use her for what he needs.
That's very true.
And that is the Jack Crawford in the book.
Absolutely.
You know, it's that whole thing of
it's true to character.
Yeah, I have the right bait here for what I need to get. And
it's working
clearly,
better than I thought.
Clearly, he got results out of the first encounter.
That's true.
Yeah.
He immediately knows how much Hannibal Lecter cares about Clarice based on this.
And based on Miggs's death and the mannerism of his death, he knows exactly what he's got in Clarice. He knows what he can get out of, well, he may not know everything, but he knows he has an in.
He has a greater chance of getting something out of him now
than if he had sent a seasoned professional to go in and talk to him.
Okay, you have convinced me. You've convinced me. It makes me like Jack Crawford less.
Well,
and that's okay.
And that is.
He jacks up the law.
It's funny. Listening to John Douglas is on the Criterion Edition commentary of the film, and I'm going to put a whole bunch of links and videos in the show notes because you can watch 2-hour documentaries about Silence of the Lambs on YouTube. And this commentary is great. And it's got some really unusual things coming from Jack Douglas. Like he talks about how when he first sat down with Scott Glenn, he was all liberal and anti-death penalty. And I don't know what that kind of guy is. And all I have to do is see what these people did. And it's really intense. And that Jack Crawford that you two are describing, that's John Douglas right there.
Yeah.
Is I'm going to get what I need, and I may have to use you really badly, and maybe I may not be good for it.
Well, I mean, you have to play that psychological game in order to catch the bad guy. Sure. That is profiling. I mean, you profile, you do what you can to set up the situation where you can catch them in a weakness,
right?
And you are exposing that weakness. You're exploiting it. That's the word. You're exploiting the weakness of the person you're trying to catch. And if you have to exploit other people along the way to get that weakness to show up, that's the ends justify the means.
Yeah, because what they're thinking of is possibly putting maybe someone's mental health into,
versus someone's life.
Exactly. Yeah. And more than one person's life because they're dealing with serial killers who are killing in multiples.
Or people at any time who could snap and just take out a whole shopping mall or something.
Well, and along those lines, one of the other things he said was you generally don't catch them from police work.
Right.
Generally, it's because they have screwed up.
Yes.
And they screw up while you're close enough in their orbit to catch them.
Yeah.
But it really emphasized sort of the, not hopelessness, but the desperation that you have to go into this. And what's interesting looking at this as a sequel is what it would look like if you got to see the pure destruction of Will Graham over the end of Red Dragon, which we didn't get to see in any adaptation of Red Dragon except for Hannibal. But if you look at Silence of Lambs then as a direct sequel to a film that doesn't exist that showed the destruction of Will Graham and how Jack Crawford put him in front of this situation when he didn't want to be there.
And that's why I'm I think of that.
Yeah.
When I see the way he treats Clarice, I'm thinking of the same Jack Crawford that basically did what he had to do with Will.
Right.
Yeah.
We're going into this knowing this about Jack. And he did it the same way.
Yeah.
I'm your pal. I'm your buddy.
You want to come work for me, right? Yeah.
But also has to do that's kind of like desperate, underhanded. I'm going to show you these pictures because I know you don't want to do it. But the minute you see that it's families, you're going to want to do it. And it's that playing, having to struggle with his own ethics. What can I like this person. They're brilliant. I know I'm going to put them in harm's way, but I need to because it's going to save lives along the way.
Yeah. So saving lives comes down.
Exactly.
It comes down to that.
So this is that same Jack Crawford. He's done all he can do with Will Graham. Will Graham is broken. At this point, he needs to find somebody new, and he finds it in a young recruit.
And it takes severely takes advantage of her father issues. And it's funny that Clarice really has two father figures in this film. A seemingly benevolent one, but manipulative, and the monster, Hannibal Lecter, who is also a father figure to her. And while seeming monstrous, is actually manipulating her far less and is actually far more concerned with her well-being than her good father figure.
Exactly.
So when you were mentioning Scott Glenn breaking down after listening to those tapes and going through the FBI training or whatever it is that he did with the FBI, when you think about like an actual career FBI agent who has to see that sort of thing day in and day out, it's going to make you into the person that will stop at nothing to try to decrease that number of unsolved murders that come across your desk or the number of cases that you see. So when you were saying that it makes you like Jack Crawford less, that he would manipulate Clarice, it's kind of what makes me like him more, that he's actually a good guy, a good, decent person who would want that to end at any cost.
When the ultimate question you get to, and we got it with every incarnation almost of Jack Crawford, is the needs of the many and the needs of the few. Is if I have to thoroughly damage Will Graham in order to stop this killer, is it worth it?
Yeah.
And in Hannibal, the series, he thoroughly damaged Will Graham to stop a lot of killers.
Yes.
When one thing that I found very interesting is that there was a study that they did really recently that there are approximately probably 100 active serial killers in the United States at any given time.
Wow, that's kind of scary.
And whether or not they actually are put together. Yeah.
I learned the statistics. It is actually frightening. And
maybe they're all in the Baltimore area, in the Hannibal verse.
Oh, they're all there.
Yeah, they're all in Baltimore.
But if you think about like how, I mean, this is one of the reasons when I was in my forensics courses, why there was such a big push for people to go into those careers because, and of course it got, fantasized and whatnot and things like CSI, Law and Order, etc. But they're also looking at that as, well, it's kind of an advertisement technique. Like you said, Silence of the Lambs was to get more women agents, but it's also to get more people in general interested because there are still counties where there are untrained professionals trying to solve crimes, not doctors doing as a coroner. Like it's an elected official in some places.
Wow.
Like you get elected as mayor to be a coroner. I mean, it's in very, very poor areas, but there are still places where you can get away with murder. Like literally. And the statistics of how many years it takes to start solving crimes, to start solving murders that are serial, it's pretty staggering. And it really will make you feel unsafe about going outside.
Yeah.
And so I can totally understand why he would start to lose his faith in humanity or at least not want to tread down that path of being an actor
It's like,
in a
hey,
dark
I'll,
movie
I'll
again.
stick in acting. You
Yeah.
go and
yeah.
stop serial
And-
killers.
Yeah, I mean,
do
this
your
is
thing.
this is a form of method acting, or I'm not even sure what the proper term is, if it is method acting, where you try to actually emulate.
That's method
that's
acting.
method.
Yeah.
This is where you have to tread lightly. You don't want to actually like visualize what your daily life would be like unless you can actually stomach it.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of reality that I don't think most people get to see or even learn about. And I feel like sometimes it's people putting blinders on. They don't want to know.
They don't want. Yeah.
You don't want to.
Or they have the romanticized version of it, because even like the wacky gore on Bones.
Oh, well,
It's-
that's silly.
it's still-
I know
it-
that's silly.
Mm-hmm.
But it's this version of horrific murders that we see that are so out there and crazy. That's not
And not only
what
that,
happens.
but when you find out who the killer is, they put a very personable spin on the killer. The 100 serial killers at any given time,
that's about random.
they are not romanticized.
Yeah.
There is
No.
nothing about them you would like, and yeah, it would turn your stomach.
Yeah. Just going down the rabbit hole of serial killers, researching this movie, because I clicked John Douglas, and then
Oh, that's a rabbit hole.
oh, man, and it does. It totally takes. And then about how Kreppel had talked to Bundy to find out about the Greenway River
The Green
killer.
River Killer, yeah.
Yeah.
And Bundy actually captured women very similarly
Yes,
to James
yeah.
Gumb.
Actually,
Yeah.
he did.
He
was
had a
very
cast
charming.
on, and
he had a
played
cast.
the
He'd
could
have
you
a
just
stack
get
of
in the
books,
car
or he'd
and-
have a
and
bag
start
he
it
would be
for me?
struggling
Yeah.
with, and then he'd knock him out
It
with
is.
the cast.
Yep, that's
Smack him over the head with
Yeah.
it.
the same way. And and also because there's that link to Bundy in those two different ways, but also they talk about Ed Gein, because a lot of what Buffalo Bill is drawn
Yes.
from Ed Gein. So that's another thing you get to click on. And I just
That's a rabbit hole.
Yeah. So the Green River Killer to Bundy to Ed Gein.
Well, hey, at least you
yeah.
didn't wander off the trail. As long as you're on YouTube, you're pretty much going to be okay.
This was all on like Wikipedia.
When you
links.
start
Yeah.
clicking links and
When
then
you
you
go into,
fall
like, the-
into the dark net,
Yeah.
Okay, no, yeah. Thankfully, I
The
was.
neither.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
neither webs.
Ophelia and I have spent significant time in
Yes.
the dark on the
Wow.
internet.
I did it for Ed Gein specifically for my forensic psychology class. I profiled Ed Gein.
Mhm.
That was my job, and not just that, but I also wrote down and documented every law he broke. So I
Oh,
actually
wow.
had the New York State Penal Code, because I was in school in New
So
York State.
if I were to arrest him, this is what we're arresting
if
him
I
for.
if I was looking at a series of these crimes, what would I psychologically be looking for? Like, what is his psychology or psychological profile?
Mm-hmm.
And he is fascinating.
What is the psychology that he is afflicted by? And he is fascinating.
Yeah.
They go into so much detail now,
Mhm.
but back then they didn't have the technology. They didn't have the testing to see, like,
How many of his lampshades were from living people?
No, not just that. I mean, all that evidence was destroyed because the town went crazy, thought he was possessed, demon, whatever. So they burnt it. They burnt it to the ground.
Yeah.
They lost everything.
There's a lot
I
of
meant
stuff that's
the
lost.
psychological part of it.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's speculation now that he was faking his mental disability the whole time.
Wow.
Like he could have been just fooling everyone.
Very lucid.
That
very
is
manipulative,
scary.
yeah.
Because, I mean, and that just makes him even more Hannibal Lecter-like.
Right.
That he could, I'm just this poor farm
Feeble
boy.
farm boy.
Yeah. Don't hurt me.
I just miss mom.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just miss my
I
mommy.
really miss mom.
And for
No.
those at home who want to play the home game, Ed Gein was the inspiration for Psycho, for
Yes.
pretty much for
Texas
James
Chainsaw
Gumb here,
Massacre.
Yeah,
Texas
Texas
Chainsaw
Chainsaw
Massacre.
Massacre.
You've got some very diverse adaptations of the Ed Gein story.
Yeah.
If you go down that rabbit hole, it is It is very disturbing.
There's darkness.
Yes.
And it's...
And just stay away from rotten.com. Now that I put it out there, now there's there's a wonderful subset of our audience who's going to do what I do every time I think of rotten.com, which is type it in and just...
What's going on in this universe
just
today?
Really, really being upset for myself for clicking anything on that page.
Yeah.
There's dark stuff. There's
no.
dark
Not
stuff.
necessarily.
Now I have
I
to
didn't
go.
necessarily use that in my research.
No,
but
I watched the Russian serial killer videos.
Wow.
There were Russian teenagers who were beating people to death with hammers and shooting video of it and uploading it online. And
that's a way to lose your faith in humanity. Right there.
we discovered one of those at work one day, and
Wow.
and then sat there for a couple hours with the link there. Like, just all we have to do is click it.
It's so disturbing.
It was.
It's tough because
It's disturbing in this
compelling.
the internet society we've created around it as well.
So let's dial
It's
it
all
back.
disturbing.
We'll dial it back away from rotten.com and the horrors that exist on the internet.
and in the universe.
And go back to your self-storage facility?
Yes,
or
to
on,
your
on planet Earth in the United States of
Yes,
America.
in the beautiful, United States of America. And did you notice it's like rainy in this movie everywhere they go? It's like
Pittsburgh.
it's
Seattle.
wet. Is Pittsburgh like that?
Oh, God,
it's
yes.
wet, cold.
Wet, cold, dark, a
Um,
good majority of the time.
So when Clarice goes to your self-storage, Jody has one of her best little things, which is if this door should fall down or anything else.
Yeah.
But in the storage facility, you see the first glimpse of a really odd thing in the movie is this odd misplaced patriotism. In the car is covered in a giant American
flag. That is
Later,
true.
we see Hannibal Lecter in his bird cage in the center of that great room, surrounded by flags. And when he does his murder tableau, it's extremely patriotic looking.
Well, it is Soldiers and Sailors Memorial and
It is.
Museum, so they may have been stuck with the flags.
And then, Ophelia, you noticed the swastika in
Yes.
James Gumm's house, and I thought, well, it could be
it's a
Buddhist
pattern
symbol.
quilt. It's a
But
full pattern quilt. You see it again when he does the night vision.
You also see a propaganda poster, really, really momentarily with a swastika on it, and specifically in this commentary, Jonathan Demme talks about how he wanted to conflate extreme patriotism with Nazism and with a penchant for violence.
Wow. I didn't
blending a
realize
lot.
Demi got that deep.
Demme was also very much not a fan of the FBI, and he was really hesitant to have them involved in the film.
Wow.
So yeah, interesting stuff.
That is interesting. Yeah. I had no idea.
And in this storage facility, we meet the head of Benjamin Raspail.
We meet Benjamin Raspail.
I love this scene completely from beginning to end because you got the really bizarrely interesting storage facility owner with his
goatee,
wonderful
and
scarf,
and his like Eastern Europeanness.
Yes,
and his driver that detests manual labor.
Detests physical labor.
I mean, it's just great. I liked the mannequin.
Yeah.
Inside with holding the long
headless
cigarette.
mannequin.
The headless mannequin.
I was like noticing it's got the
There's
long.
so much great detail as she walks inside, and there's really interesting stuff in this room.
There's an owl, a stuffed owl,
stuffed
which I
owl.
think is a call out to Psycho. The stuffed birds of Psycho. And then there's a piano in there, and it's a set designer's dream.
Oh, it's
this
like
location.
mannequins and skulls, and and then that gigantic Rolls Royce.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
In the book, this is one of the deviations. In the book, Benjamin Raspail was not involved in this situation. It was not Benjamin Raspail's head in the jar. It was still the first kill, or one of the first kills of James Gumm, and it was a man named Klaus.
Yes.
and he was the head in the jar. But they sort of conflated these things.
Yeah.
Benjamin Raspail is basically the character of Franklin from Hannibal the series.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, they're all this stuff gets sort of mixed and used in different ways. But I think it sounded more interesting, I think, the way they changed the story.
When it fits more. And that's the one really impressive thing. Every time I watch this movie, I see where they trimmed the very limited fat from the novel, because there is fat in the novel. And they trimmed it in such a specific way. It's like preparing the perfect cut of meat here. And they really did. And like they cut things that only enhance the story. Mm-hmm. Like one of the things that bothered me so much when I read the novel, because I read it after seeing the film, is Hannibal makes the realization and tells Clarice that James Gumb is making a woman suit. Mm-hmm. And he says it in a line where he says he wants to have a vest with tits on it. Mm-hmm. And number one, that felt out of character for Hannibal to say tits.
To say such a crude word.
And two, why shouldn't Clarice have that realization? Why does Hannibal get all the realizations? Because then why doesn't he just tell her what to go look for and she'll go look for it? You know, at that point, it's not even an investigation.
Because he's giving her everything?
Yeah. So moving it in this direction is wonderful, and giving it to her is wonderful.
Yeah, and don't forget that she tears her pants and
is going to need a tetanus shot.
Exactly, because she bleeds.
And Hannibal knows when it has stopped.
It's stopped. That's why it's important to note that. You know, remember that it's like, the bleeding has stopped, and she was like, okay.
So Hannibal, and this is our second wonderful scene between Hannibal and Clarice, where we actually start getting into Hannibal realizing the potential value of this relationship to him in multiple ways. The value is I can use this to my advantage to better my conditions, and I can use this to my advantage to get the juicy information that I so crave that Chilton won't give me.
Yeah. There is a great sort of movement from the dark, scary storage facility where you've seen the scary head, and it's raining, and Clarice gets back and their hair is all wet, and she's crouched by the plexiglass.
Because they haven't put out a chair.
They haven't put out a chair. And Hannibal's in the back of his cell.
Somewhere.
In the dark. And
so,
there's this great POV where she's like scanning the cell. Yeah. She can hear his voice.
And he shoves the towel out to her. Yeah, because she is rapidly going, oh, yeah, I figured it out. You gave me the stuff and I figured it out. It's an anagram, miss the rest of me. And she's sort of like spilling out this information because it's like, no, I got you. Yeah. You set it up and I figured it out. I am as smart as you. And you tried to make fun of me, but I did this. And it's really scaring with that loud clang.
You don't get to see where it comes from.
Yeah.
It's just the drawer pops out.
And then all I kept thinking was, they told you don't take anything he gives you. They told you don't take anything he gives you.
And the only thing I could think of is she puts her hand in, he pulls the drawer back, and then he's got a little snack. He's got some fingers to munch on.
Finger sandwiches.
Right. So I'm like, don't do it.
Don't do it. But it's the towel, and she dries her hair, and he's completely dark other than his hands and his legs. And it's tingling.
And in the dark, he asks if her other father figure wants to fuck her.
Yes.
Do you think he thinks about that scenarios? And when Clarice is so smug with him, it's like, no, that's the kind of thing Miggs would say. And Hannibal just like, not anymore.
Not anymore.
Oh, it's wonderful. And here's where he makes his ask. He wants a window where he can see a tree or even water. And he knows they'll never, ever let him out. Mm-hmm. Man.
I like the way he says, I'll help you catch him, Clarice.
Yeah. Just ask me. too.
Yeah.
Ask me to help you.
The asking for help is mirrored in Hannibal.
In Hannibal.
Yeah.
He always has them ask.
Yeah.
Because-
All you have
help
to do is ask.
You just
It's
have to ask.
it's let me in.
Mm-hmm.
Because
you have to invite the vampires into your house.
Yeah.
Once you
have
invite
to
me in,
ask the devil for help.
Mhm.
You have to make
Exactly.
the deal to sell your soul.
and we get another one of those great transitions that the series took and ran with it, where he says, our Billy must already be searching for that next special lady. And we cut immediately to Catherine Martin, played by Brooke Smith, singing along with Tom Petty's American Girl.
Yes.
Which is a great
It's pretty
song.
awesome. And also just sort of gives her a whole backstory just in that.
Yeah, you learn
Oh, yeah.
you learn a lot really quickly.
30
And then her
seconds.
cat, when she's talking to the cat on the window.
Apparently, there are lots of cat references.
In this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
Really?
there was a cat in one of the other
Yeah, when she goes to
victims'
when she
houses.
goes to the other
Oh yeah, in
Yeah,
they both have
in
cats.
Frederica Bimmel's
in
apartment,
Bimmel's
house.
house. The cat leads her to the other room.
Yes.
There's cat imagery that's all over the Bimmel's house.
Interesting.
And there's supposed to be like a connection between
Well, and then you get
then-
James Gunn with his dog, which is
and Catherine is CATH.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good stuff.
As Hannibal says, all good things come to those who
Indeed, he does. Why does Catherine Martin wear a hideous fruit pattern shirt? And is she actually wearing that in the car? Because it seems so out of place when he's cutting it off her there.
Yeah. It is a rather horrific shirt. And I don't know whether because they had to tear it up the back, this was something that had a good pattern on it to look good in the dark.
Maybe.
You know, it was probably something you can get several of
It's
that
horrendous.
you could buy.
It is
Because
pretty
you may
awful,
have had to do
but-
this scene more than once.
True.
So when you're going to do something like this, you probably have triples, if not more. So for all we know, it's like, okay, well, and also, I don't know if they're trying to say something about Catherine Martin's sort of persona, that she's this senator's daughter, but she has this sort of, she's in this car going to this sort of not great apartment, living alone with her cat. The way she's her car is not all that great. Her clothes, I mean, if you look at the way she's dressed, she doesn't look like the daughter of a senator.
True.
Right.
That this is sort of like, she's singing all American girl, yet her mom is sort of like this, I
Very
love
put
your
together.
suit.
Yes.
Sounding very Mason Verger-esque when he
Yes,
said,
yes.
Love
Love your
love
suit.
the suit. The contrast.
Yeah.
Between Catherine and her mother. So kind
It
of
makes her very much not the spoiled little rich girl you would
Exactly.
expect.
Yeah. And
So I think that makes her more likable.
yeah.
Kind of makes her a little goofy.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
the fruit,
Exactly.
and maybe they didn't really factor in people looking so closely the way we do.
Oh, yeah.
To actually
In HD.
realize that there's on the collar it looks like an orange slice.
Yes.
Like they're just orange circles until you get real close
And
and
then
pay
you
attention.
realize
You're like,
that they're-
oh,
yeah,
that
they're
is
sliced.
an orange slice.
open orange colored.
And bananas.
yeah.
And some bananas. I don't
Why-
think people were expecting us
Why
to
would
look that
Jane
hard.
Gum throw that out of the back and not take it with him?
That's
Yeah.
evidence.
That is
Yeah.
That is leaving a trail. Like, hey,
Yeah.
look at me! I just kidnapped someone from this spot,
Yeah.
right here.
Do you think it's being so sure of himself that he doesn't care anymore? He has killed 4 women at this point.
5,
5.
because from the posters, not the posters, but the newspaper clippings.
Bill
he's
Skin's fifth.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Skin's
right.
fifth.
They've at least found 5 bodies.
So
if you don't count poor old Mrs. Lipman.
oh
in the-
yes,
in the
well,
tub.
Right,
yes,
right.
in the I assume lie-filled
And
tub.
nobody caught that body yet, so
Right.
it wouldn't have
Yeah.
been number 5. That would have been number 6.
So we should talk a bit about Ted Levine here.
Who's
And
amazing.
I'm not going to just do the voice all the time, but
Really?
he is really good here, and the interplay between him and Catherine Martin is like we don't immediately know that this is the killer.
Right.
number one, because we see him with his goggles on, and he might be over there in the corner.
Watching
Right.
Yeah.
her with this
But
guy.
you have
We have inklings, and we know, and she knows when he says, could you just go right in the van and go to the bar? She looks over and looks around, and we as an audience are just like, no,
Don't do
get
it.
in the van.
Don't go in the van.
Don't do it.
And it's incredibly intense, and he has this vulnerability about him. While Ted Levine is incredibly creepy in this role, he also does have that bit of vulnerability to him.
And I'm sure it's probably something that is common with a lot of serial killers that are able to like lure rather than, sneaking in and I think they said that about Bundy, that he looked like a decent guy.
Oh yeah. He was what?
Bundy was incredibly charming.
Oh, wait,
yeah.
Was he the math professor? I forget.
I'm not
No,
sure.
I'm sorry.
He
that
was the one who
was
defended himself in
different
court,
Ted.
though.
Different. No, not Ted. That's.
Are you
I'm
thinking
thinking.
Kaczynski, the Unabomber?
I'm thinking of Unabomber.
Yeah.
He was a math professor.
Yeah. Bundy was incredibly charming.
Yeah.
But
and
wasn't
incredibly good looking.
That was it. He had a charmer's face.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what it was.
And so it wouldn't be beyond a possibility that that James could turn something on in order. And all he's trying to do is seem like some hapless, I'm having a hard time kind of guy.
And it also looks like he's picked up the couch from like somebody's trash.
Yeah.
So it's like somebody put it out to the curb and he's trying to pick it up.
So he's probably
he's extra vulnerable
Yeah.
and down on his luck and
And he's trying to do it on his own.
right.
What do you do? It's like, do you just walk away?
How you try to make it work
Yeah. And then
and look for a good Samaritan.
exactly.
Yes.
But that is, it's like when he gets her to back up into the.
Just
It's like,
climb on
it's
in.
all
Yeah.
over now.
Exactly.
Sarah, you were size 14.
Yes.
What?
What? And then he looks at the shirt. It was such a like. I was like,
Okay,
oh,
I guess I am going to do a lot of it.
Did we have to do the insert shot with the size 14 to prove that she was?
He's got a good eye.
Yeah. I guess he does.
He's speculating.
But there is like when he cuts it up the back,
Yeah.
and just like the way and I think one thing I was thinking of with the whole shirt thing that perhaps because he found exactly what he wanted, that he was so focused on that perfect, sort of expansive skin on her back that he may have tossed.
Well, no, but he closes the doors before he does anything. Because there's that shot of him looking around. This is just a clue being thrown out. This is clunky.
Yeah.
This is her groceries in the middle of the parking lot and
That's
disappear. That would be fine. That's enough evidence to say, well, she got nabbed.
Exactly.
Yeah, something bad happened here.
Yeah.
I was wondering why they needed to do it because it did seem like overkill. Like it seemed like it wouldn't be something that he would have done consciously.
Right.
That it was a mistake. I don't know. And now that you mention it, that he's closing the doors, I thought
there's no way it flies out of there.
I thought that maybe he had like tossed it, while he was doing all that, but the doors were closed. So it's true. This is something that's kind of incongruous. I don't know. Did it happen that way in the book?
I can't remember. The only excuse I can understand is he simply is too confident at this point.
Which is the usual downfall, as Ophelia was saying.
Right.
It's usually they do something just stupid.
When
you're just trying to push them to do something hurried or incomplete, either to antagonize them or slip them up somehow.
Yeah. Maybe he was just horrified by the shirt.
Well,
He was
I
like,
wouldn't want
I don't want this in my van.
Right.
It's ugly.
it. Too tacky.
Which is saying something for James Gumb.
So then Jack takes Clarice to West Virginia,
On
Elk
that
River, West Virginia.
Cramped little plane.
In that cramped little plane, yeah. And he's sort of testing her this whole time. Okay, give me information. And she goes through the stereotypical serial killer stuff. He's probably a white male. Mm-hmm. He's probably in his 30s or 40s. He has a house because he needs space. He needs privacy. And this is where Clarice sees that she's being used a little bit, but she's already too
She's in too deep.
She's invested.
Because this is where, she calls Jack on having put her in there to get information.
She totally calls him on.
And he said, if I'd sent you in looking for that information, Lecter would have turned to stone and we would be nowhere.
Yeah. It's like he would have smelled it all over you, basically.
The funeral home is full of amazing people.
Yes.
This is the actors and the faces we have in the funeral home. And I didn't realize Tracy Walter, who plays the organist and part of the team, he was Bob, the Joker's sidekick in Batman.
Bob Gun Bob. Yeah. That's actually written here.
Bob Gun.
It's written in my notes. Bob, Gun Bob.
But this scene is so great because it takes Clarice from theory to practice. Mm-hmm. Because she's looked at all the pictures, she's been quizzed, now she's in the field for real.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And we get, what's also wonderful about it is we don't see the extent of the horror of this body until way after the cast sees it.
Yeah.
Way after the flung open body bag and everyone reacts to it and we don't get to see it except in pieces until they pull the pupa out.
Yeah.
And then when they flip her over, that's the first time we see a complete body there.
It's really nicely constructed in how they lead up to that moment. Mm-hmm. Because we get to see this down home funeral home. We get to go in and see the cluster of all the cops.
All the cops.
They're all
there's
there.
A lot of cops.
There is a lot of cops.
And that's kind of the way it would be in a small town.
Exactly.
All would be involved.
And that's what I like about it.
They don't have anything better to do.
Right.
There's nothing else in the town that's going wrong except for this one thing.
Yeah.
So it brings all of their attention and they have the leisure time to all be gathered in one place. This is not Chicago
exactly, where everybody's still out there trying to find
where you can barely
killers.
Spare one person to be
everybody's
on the
there with their coffee and their donut. And showing how it is. It's a small town.
Yep.
All the people that are in the room.
Everybody knows everybody.
Yeah. You've got the local guy who's who's also the the coroner.
Yeah.
Playing on the organ, and she has that flashback.
Yeah.
Where she's going back to West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
This is where she came from, and walking in that old funeral home and seeing her own father and remembering what that experience was for her. And she has to go in to examine the body of someone that was not very much different than the person she was growing up. They set this all up.
And it's
really
why she's
nicely.
a perfect example. When she can look at the body and say, she's not a local. She's
a city.
From,
that says city to me.
Because her ears are pierced 3 times.
Glitter nail
and there's
polish.
glitter nail polish. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, we get to see another one of those great dualities of the sexism at work, because Crawford plays on the sexism just to get the chief to lay off a little bit,
right?
And
let's
then
not
she
talk
gets
about
to
this in front of the little lady over here,
and she gets to play on the sexism herself while dialing up her accent to 11, and to get hey guys, maybe you did a good job. Why don't you
I
all
love her speech.
Just go on now.
We're going to take care of her now.
We have things we need to do for her. Yeah.
It makes it really human. Makes it really, we're not going to dissect this girl, which is basically what they're going to do. Makes it about taking care of her. This is the
getting
next.
her what she needs.
Exactly. And I'm still trying to figure out why that many cops were standing around the body, drinking coffee. Because then when they all leave, you realize what's in between them is the girl on the gurney.
Right.
was like,
and to be honest, I don't think there are too many cops that would be hanging out with a dead body like that.
Yeah.
Not eating.
Not anywhere.
Or drinking coffee.
And it's big town or small
First of
town.
all, I don't know how many rules that really violates in a laboratory setting. And second of all, I don't think people would have the stomach to do it.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, you know that's a dead body.
Even in the bag, it's going to smell.
Yeah.
You're
and
gonna smell that.
And it's not like it's not like she's fresh kill. Yeah.
No.
You know,
She's got that putrefaction starting.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like, is it the smell that much contained in that bag?
No.
Which they imply with this.
They do.
Because she's bagged up and then they put this, the little Vicks, vapor, which
and
is.
I thought about something that it's white.
Yeah.
I thought about it's got to be visual to the audience.
Well, that's what I was saying.
It's usually clear. And
it's usually clear.
Yeah.
And that's what I was asking when we were watching it. I was like,
Has it ever been white?
Is what they're using actually white, or was it a device so that let's make it something white so that
Vicks is what they would use
and
to try to deter the
clear.
smell.
Okay.
Because it's really strong and they do use it.
Well, you also get the moment where Clarice turns away to smudge something on her face.
And she doesn't want everybody to look at her doing it.
And so having it be clear would de-emphasize the fact that this woman who, they're all sexualizing, they're all look at the pretty girl, now has a smudge of white under her nose, and doesn't she look silly? It's an incredible amount of sexism, and you're young and you don't know anything. And so I think that's really the number one reason why it was a visual thing rather than being actually clear like Vicks.
Yeah. Well, and also the idea that they all have it. That this is,
they all have it.
The body is going to smell. It's kind of like a dramatic, okay, almost like making
Here
you
it goes.
be
And
there.
it's a great moment for the audience because we're all fascinated with procedure. And this is like, oh, well, how could you be around smelly dead bodies? Oh, well, that makes sense. Okay.
You would do something to make it less smelly.
Something to overpower the smell.
And it gives Clarissa that moment to turn her back and falter a bit.
And come back for the reveal.
Get a little gaggy.
And they're like, are you okay?
Back.
Hey, can you, and having that, steeling herself, all right, time to be in the big leagues.
This is my first actual serial killer kill here.
And you can see her she's doing it.
But she's obviously disturbed.
Yeah, she's getting more upset as she goes.
The removal of the pupa in her throat has this wonderful exhalation sound effect after it's removed, like you hear the gas and it's also I feel like it's a sigh that the evidence was found, the evidence that was it feels like this from beyond the grave sigh there. I love that touch, and it's such a wonderful little subtle thing on the soundtrack that if Brett Ratner were directing, it would be
in a very unconvincing, flat kind of way. and using, a real actress to, it's like you had a live person there.
That poor girl who had to lay there.
Yeah. And, and having to have someone manipulate her mouth to open it, to take the photo. And I read they actually made that
out of chocolate.
It was Tootsie Roll and gummies. Yeah, they made it so that if she accidentally swallowed it,
it would be okay.
It would be okay. It's like, oh wow, that could have been a whole line of candy.
Yes. Can you even Silence of the Lambs themed
Death Moth,
Chrysalis Head Moth,
and you could open it. It's like a candy shell, and you open it, and then
it's wrapped in a shell or like tin foil. That how there's the little. The bunnies that are shaped like bunnies, and then the tin foil has the pattern of the bunny. You could have a pattern of the body.
Yes.
So it's like a woman's body, and then you peel it open, and it's
this is a merchandising opportunity.
I know,
that these
marketing
filmmakers
gold.
missed.
I'm patenting it right now.
My.
You can't have it.
When they're leaving this scene, we get the wonderful discussion in the car about why it matters that Crawford treat her like an agent in front of the guys
Yeah.
because they look to him to see how to behave
Yeah.
because he's in charge.
Yeah. It's like she has a feminist moment
She does.
because he like blows it off with I just needed to get him out of there. And she's like, but
It
you know,
matters.
It matters because they all look to you and you made it okay. And that's not cool.
I love the bug guys.
Oh, everybody loves the bug guy.
They're playing some wacky chess with their beetles.
That was pretty awesome.
They're so lovable.
And the response for her asking, so if he moves one of your pieces, does that still count? And Pilcher goes, yeah, how do you play?
Right, exactly. Like everybody plays
Yeah.
this.
Like everybody plays that
Everyone
game.
plays bug chess, right?
Come on.
So we get Dan Butler in his second appearance in a Hannibal Lecter movie.
His more awesome appearance because he's great.
Well, he was Jimmy Price.
But as Jimmy Price, he wasn't.
He didn't have anything to do.
Yeah, he was very clinical. He was just doing this. He gets to do some fun stuff.
And you mean this is like from a real investigation? Cool.
Cool.
And this is such a lovely scene because it's one of the only scenes that really takes us out of the intensity of the story we're in. When Pilcher is asking if she ever goes out for cheeseburgers and beer, the amusing house wine.
I love that line.
And are you hitting on me, Doctor?
Yes.
Yes.
And it's very warm.
Yeah, it is.
You know, she takes
Genuine.
it very well. It's not the Chilton creepiness.
Yeah.
And how she's immediately kind of taken it back, where these are like the nice guys.
These are lab geeks.
These are lab geeks. These are her people.
And they're working, I assume, at the Smithsonian.
I don't know if I think it's the Smithsonian in the book. It's filmed in the Carnegie Museum in Pittsburgh.
You get that great walking by the dinosaurs at the beginning of the shot.
And their very sort of coy way of looking at each other, that Clarice isn't really like offended by his flirting.
Yeah.
You know, that she's kind of like,
when she walked in and asked a question about their bug game.
Yeah. You kind of get the idea that she's now like with the people that are more like her.
Yeah.
You know,
she's a geeky student.
She's a geeky, into all this stuff. Yeah. And it's a nice, warm, friendly moment in the middle of a lot of kind of horrific stuff.
Mm-hmm. And we meet Acherontia Styx, the death's head moth. It's usually from Asia.
Yes. The death's head moths that they brought in died. So they had to bring in other moths and costumed them.
Moth costumer would be
there was a
excellent.
moth wrangler.
You'd have to.
They actually, in the documentary I watched, they actually talked to the moth wrangler. Apparently they brought in real moths with this, that have the skull-like thing. There's actually 3 of them that has the skull-like thing on their back. And they carefully brought them in, took care of them while they got there. But remember, Pittsburgh is having the coldest winter it's had in years. They got to the warehouse and they died.
Oh, man.
Because it was too cold.
So they can't put the no animals were harmed from the making of this
they
film.
didn't mean to do it. It was an accident. So they brought in, I guess, hardier moths. And they actually made little costumes for them.
Mm-hmm.
That is kind of adorable.
Isn't it?
Actually.
Yes. And then they were trying to figure out how to glue the death's head part to their backs. And they tried several different things. And the Wrangler figured out that fake nails worked perfectly, but then they tried to super glue it, and they didn't remember that the moth body bends while they flap their wings.
Oh.
So what happened was that basically they went to go fly
and they'd rip apart,
and they couldn't go. They just couldn't go anywhere.
Oh, okay.
So they finally found a glue.
So then Bill Murray recommended Staples. Right?
Staples, exactly. But listening to this story is a little horrific.
It's a Scrooged joke.
Because a lot of those moths you see in that room are actually have a light fishing line attached to them, and they're flying because the moth wrangler has them like on a pole.
A string.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
And would like fly them to
these days they'd just be digital.
Yeah, exactly. This is before the digital age.
Right.
So a lot of the stuff that's moving in the room later on, and a lot of that stuff.
They're on strings.
Yeah, they're on strings, and they're
puppet
other
moths.
they're
Very
puppet
nuts.
moths in costume.
Costumed puppet moths.
Wow. And the way that he tries, or the way he cuts into the moth
Yes.
in order to expose the death's head moth, which I don't necessarily agree with his dissection technique, but it was interesting that they cut on two sides of the back.
Yeah.
To expose it, which is exactly the way this victim was cut. Two sides on the back.
Oh yes, the
because we were
big diamonds.
wondering, like, why did they?
Why did he cut it in two spots?
Because they kind of
like
cut
that?
a window eventually.
It looked like a hatch. Like like they cut, but he makes. I don't know.
I guess it was
it was a dramatic
to be dramatic
reveal.
to only see the little death's head.
Yeah,
on the
but
back
it
of
could
the
have
moth.
slid it down the center
sure,
and exposed it.
But then you have to
know?
break the.
So
Well, you might still need to do more stuff with it. They only have one. So if all they need to see is
If
the
they're
back
already-
of the moth, I don't
But it's
know.
interesting that they did
that's-
it exactly where that is.
How do they know what
Well,
they're exposing?
You know what?
They don't know.
Here
They don't know.
is an example of how wonderful Silence of the Lambs is, because this is us nitpicking.
We're getting bent
We
out
are,
of
I'm
shape.
just
we
saying
are
that they didn't
grasping
know
at straws.
what it was.
Yeah, that's true.
when
No.
they first took
No,
it
but
out.
if you are looking at the thorax of the bug and you know where the thorax is going to be,
I also like that Clarice knew exactly to take alcohol immediately so that it didn't deteriorate. That was very clever.
Yeah,
especially
well
after it's been inside someone's throat for a while,
exactly.
weighted down.
Yeah,
But-
it's very well preserved.
But I'm just saying they didn't know what it was when they started
Very
cutting.
true.
There's no way for them to say, I know exactly what this bug is. I'm going to cut a circle around the thing that's going to tell me what this bug is. If you already know what it is from the outside before you start cutting, just
I wonder
just say it.
if fiction
Just say it.
isn't real, we'll know the answer to this question.
Yes,
We need
They
some
seem to know the answer
entomologists.
to
mostly
questions.
Or
everything. Yes.
Lepidoptera.
Yes, listeners, if you have not
Lepidopterologist.
had the wonderful experience of reading the amazingly epic comments,
Oh, you have to
go to
have
eattherudecast.com and just explore the
I
comments
look
section.
forward to them every episode. I love it so much.
So here we get another floating camera. We are sort of
Our
moth
lovely steady,
POV here.
our steady cam, very almost
we're
like
in
you're
the
a moth
basement.
flying through the.
Yep.
We see the incredibly creepy mannequins in
Yes.
Bill's
I
I
workroom.
love how run down the walls are,
Yeah.
and all the molding is like chipped and paint is flaking.
Well, it is an old basement that was not well finished,
Yes.
and Bill working at his sewing machine naked.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's a nice touch. And then we follow the dog.
Yeah.
And,
Yep.
You can hear the girl screaming in the background.
Yeah.
yes. And we get the
Mannequins, and they zoom in on the clothes, and I don't know if you were probably looking at the clothes that were on the mannequins, but I was thinking, wow, this is very punk rock.
Yeah, it's
Like,
very glam.
There's like
yeah.
some shiny vinyl, like hot pink shiny vinyl with like black
yeah.
stripes.
Oh,
Looks
the
like
stuff
a
that's on the
weird
mannequins
raincoat
is
type
awesome.
thing.
He's setting up like his own little rave back there.
Yeah.
You know, he's going to disco.
well, they're the background for his
his
for
dance.
his shows, for his little "Would You Fuck Me" dance.
Exactly. There is entourage.
They are. So Precious takes us to the pit, and
I love that. Precious takes
Precious
us to the
takes
pit.
take it to the pit. Well, you know what's funny is that dog looks exactly the same as the dog in the Burbs. And the first time the dog in the Burbs gets out, you hear in Jerry Goldsmith's amazing Burbs soundtrack, you hear this little bark, 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 thing with the music in time with, and when Precious takes her run, I hear that soundtrack.
Very interesting.
That is an obscure connection.
That is really obscure.
Arcane, even.
I don't even remember the Burbs anymore. I saw it. I don't remember it anymore.
Oh.
I saw it like
I mean,
shortly on video, like
you
shortly
need
after
to,
it
you
came
need to
out.
just watch it immediately because Bruce Dern is amazing.
I remember it being a very interesting film,
And-
but I have not revisited it in several decades.
So we again learn information very effectively. We see the news report where it says Catherine was taken, and that video of Senator Martin. So we get the connection. Okay, she's the daughter of a senator, and here's the plan. And the president is very concerned.
Yes.
And we also get that really great moment where they talk about how her use of Catherine's name is trying to personify her, so it's harder to cut her up.
Like she's been coached.
Yeah, because she's a person, not an object then.
If he thinks of her as a person and not an object, he won't want to kill her.
I don't think that's a truth for this particular killer.
No.
Well, there is that moment when he's looking down at her and he
starts to get
momentarily feels her pain, and you see him
it's when she starts
get
calling
close
for her
to
mother.
crying. Yeah. And then when she just starts screaming, then he's able to detach again because she's just hysterical, and he can do his frightening imitation scream there.
Oh, yeah. He does the,
yeah.
And they do carry that over of talking about how the senator is trying to say her name over and over again and make her human. And then to later on see the scene where he's saying it puts the lotion in the basket. And then he keeps saying it. And that when she does start getting upset and calling for her mother, you see that quiver in his lip and that moment where like, is he
going to feel bad? Yeah.
Upset.
And then put the fucking lotion in the
Right,
basket.
exactly. And he catches himself. And that he has to like then be angry and think of her as an it again. So they do connect that, even though in real life with this character, if he's going to do some of the atrocities that he's doing, that actually probably may not be something in his mental makeup at this point, that he probably doesn't think of anybody as human. But it works really nicely here in the way they've set it up with that moment with when Clarice says that, and then we see that little moment later on.
So here's another example of Jack taking strong advantage of a situation. Senator's daughter, let's hit Lecter with a deal.
Yeah.
And when Chilton is cut out of a situation, he is a whiny little brat.
Oh, he is.
I'm not just some turnkey.
Yes, you are. Because you're an idiot. He keeps like trying to block her path.
Yeah.
And then you can't keep coming here and not telling me.
He's my patient. I have rights.
He is very whiny, isn't he?
Extremely whiny. I think Jodie Foster is amazing in this scene when she presents the deal. We're about to get into an incredible discussion for her, but this presentation of the deal, for every day of that week, you may walk on the beach, you may swim in the ocean under SWAT team surveillance, of course.
Yes.
And it's such
like
a
salesman.
presentation. It totally, yeah.
She's selling it.
But then Catherine Martin dies, you get nothing.
I love the angle in which Hannibal is in.
Yeah, he's sitting on his bed there.
And he has that thing that he's doing with his hand, where his hand is up and the palm is up. Mm-hmm. And you just see the back of it, like his head. He's not really looking at her, but we don't see his face. We don't see his reaction. All we get is that really weird, odd turn of his wrist.
Mm-hmm. Before he picks up the deal.
Yeah. It's so deliberate and almost inhuman. So fluid and almost delicate and ballet-like.
It's like when he licks his finger in the first scene to look at that. And he has a ham-fisted transition here, the kind he made fun of Clarice about, because she talks about how there's turns nesting, and he says, "Oh well, it'll be turns for us too, Clarice." And he takes back the power. Yeah. And here's where we get quid pro quo, because she needs to talk about herself to feed the monster.
Yes, I need something from you.
The staging here is amazing because he looks away every time he asks her a question. When he's listening to her, he's not looking at her. And he looks at her when he's talking about Catherine. But when I think you're seeing the true interest in Clarice, not just manipulative Hannibal Lecter, not a monstrous, selfish person here. It's true interest. And she talks about that there was something found in the throat, that there was, and Hannibal says, was it a butterfly?
Yeah.
And it really upset Ophelia that she said, yes, it was a moth.
It did, but I did a little bit of background snooping.
See, we research for this podcast.
We do.
It is part of they're both butterflies and moths are part of the order Lepidoptera. But there's some discussion and debate against, or not against, but among taxonomists that there's kind of a fuzzy line between the two. So
it'd be hard to, as they get closer in form, determine.
Well, some of the things that they say only moths have or only moths do, like for instance, butterflies are during the day and moths are nocturnal. But there are exceptions to that. There's morphology that they follow, but there's exceptions to that. So that's why there's a blurring of the lines between the...
It'd be really hard to definitively nail down the difference between butterfly and moth.
Maybe not different.
See, I always took it as purely iconographic when he says, was it a butterfly? It doesn't matter that it was a moth. The butterfly is only change and transition.
They both go under metamorphosis.
And so he's looking at it from the archetype.
Changing,
this is about change, because he already pretty much is confident that he knows who's doing this. And this is the moment Hannibal Lecter knows, yes, it is this guy. Okay.
Exactly. So I think, and that's true. It's like that's what he's figuring out here, is that it's something that has gone through that metamorphosis, that change. And so when she's like, "Oh yeah," I was like, "Oh, it's a moth," but even the way she kind of says it, she says, "Oh no, but I mean, it's a moth." But you're pretty much on. The way she delivers the response line to it, actually clarifies that. Like, well, no, it's not a butterfly, but no, it's a moth, and it's kind of the same thing. And it's because it's more about something that changes from one thing to another, from the simple caterpillar, going into the chrysalis and then becoming, something else is what he's going for. Because when he's trying to pull in the information from her about Catherine Martin, you can sort of,
was she big through the hips?
Yeah. Roomy.
Exactly. Which is another vocal tick that Mason Verger has in the series.
Exactly. You can tell he's kind of,
gotta glow.
Gotta glow.
Yeah, because this is what is the crux of James Gumb, and what made him such a controversial character in the LGBT community at the time. I mean, there were protests at the Academy Awards that this homosexual character is so poorly portrayed, is the violent character. And really, I think a lot of that was missing the point.
Yeah.
And James Gumb is not as well drawn as Francis Dollaride is, but he's certainly far more complex. And Hannibal specifically says he's not a transsexual, but he thinks he is.
Yeah.
He wants to be, because that would simplify it. That would make sense to him.
Right.
But instead, he's something far more gray.
Right. Yeah. And I think in the documentary I saw, Demi actually talks about that he wishes he had brought that point across even more, because he realized that was what the community didn't understand, was that he wasn't actually trans.
Right.
And it's in the dialogue, and it happens here where he says, he hates his own identity so much that he just wants to be anything that's not him. So he doesn't technically want to be a woman because he feels he's a woman trapped in a man's body, or he has another identity. He just wants to be anything that is not him. He so despises himself, and that there's power in women. There's something he doesn't have. It's trying to be something he's not. So it wasn't it wasn't an LGBT sort of community ideal here, that he was struggling with his own gender, or is that, no, this is just, I hate myself. What can I do? You know, he could have been anything,
Right.
but he decided to choose something opposite him, and something that he perceived as having, probably more
Something
power
better,
and more
yeah.
influence, or looked better than he did, maybe got something that he didn't get in life, or was just so
Or
much,
there was something about like that covet.
yes.
You covet the thing you see every day. Maybe there was something in that person that maybe that person had a better life.
Exactly.
and
had
he
friends.
just wanted that better life, but the only way he thought he could get it is to literally put that person's skin on.
Yeah.
The skin on, exactly. But apparently that little part, even though this is that's some wonderful dialogue, especially since it comes after Clarice sharing, her part, and then she demands the quid pro quo, back, and you have that beautiful reflection in the glass.
Oh, when
Oh,
Hannibal
yes.
steps into
Yep.
the light. Yeah.
Oh,
I wrote this down.
it's
Quid
gorgeous.
pro quo, doctor.
Yeah. And he comes, and he's almost ferocious.
Yeah, it's like, I see. You think you're playing the game?
Yeah. And that's when he comes in, he hates his identity, and then we do another wonderful transition.
To Chilton listening to the conversation. And we go back to Bill, and this is the it rubs the lotion on its skin scene, which is horrifying, and the angles are horrifying. And Demi said this was one of the most difficult scenes to shoot in the whole thing because of that angle looking down on her in this pit. And she had to crawl in through a very small door and then cover it with dirt.
Yeah.
So she could get into the pit.
Yeah, she said it was awful because
I can imagine.
Yeah, it was like really hard to get in there. And then when she had to go to the bathroom,
She had to get
she had to crawl through the hole and go, yeah.
Well, if she'd asked James Gumb, he'd probably lower a bucket.
Oh, God. You're already in a pit on a stage
De
built
Niro would have done
in an
it.
abandoned GE warehouse in
the cold.
Pittsburgh in the coldest winter ever, and you want her to pee in a bucket.
Well, I don't want that. This is not me.
Oh, okay. You're just offering her a solution. You're being helpful. Can we talk about the claw marks and her react? It just, and because we talk about she's from town, and the glitter
polish.
Yeah, you get to see it embedded.
And she wouldn't have seen that before because the light wasn't there.
Yeah.
This is the first time light has passed it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's just it's that thriller horror moments in these movies where
I'm not the first.
Yeah.
And basically,
I know what's going to happen
in
now.
the novel,
Right.
that was
If
Catherine
there's no
realizing
girls
where she
hanging out.
is.
Yeah.
Realizing that she is with Buffalo Bill. And that's a huge, terrifying moment.
Oh, yeah. Just to see all those bloody claw marks.
I don't know if she knows she's with Buffalo.
No,
Bill.
in the book.
In the book,
that
she
moment, she is suspected that that's where she is. But when she sees the claw marks that there were other girls here at one point, then she realizes that's him.
Yeah. Instead of, in the movie, it's just her moment of freak out.
And legitimate freak.
Oh, yeah. And she does a lot of freaking out. And then
Then Chilton, you think you're gonna walk on the beach, Hannibal? Yeah. He's. You really want Hannibal to kill Chilton by the end of this movie.
Yeah, you
and
really
that's really
do.
one of the other things that makes him more likable is because he's pitted against this absolute horrible person.
He is.
And he's laying on Hannibal's bed, and Hannibal is stuck in that on the dolly
Yeah.
with the cage in front of his face.
Squishing his nose in. I think it's an upside down hockey mask.
Yeah.
Is what they used for that.
And he's so proud of himself for setting up this new deal that he leaves his pen on Hannibal's pillow.
Oh, yes.
Not
because,
just any kind of pen,
Yeah.
not the flimsy plastic
Oh,
kind.
no, that
Metal
lovely
a
gold
metal pen.
pen. Fancy. And it is like, oh, you're such a nemesis that you just left behind you tell people the rules.
Yeah.
You
are
just
the
gave
guy.
me a weapon,
Yeah.
and a pretty good one.
And it's great because the eyes, and then you see the close up of the pen.
Yeah.
And Chilton's just doing his thing where he's just like, well, I, actually talked to Senator Martin. And it is exactly.
I've set up my own deal for you.
Set up my own, because I'm so much better than the FBI. And, and the whole time you're watching Hannibal's eyes stare at that pen. And you're like, oh, Chilton, you're an idiot.
And meanwhile, Jack's getting reamed by Roger Corman.
Yes.
Filmmaker Roger Corman, who gave Jonathan Demme his start in independent films. Independent, what we really mean B movies. Plays the head of the FBI. And we see Paul Krendler, who plays a much larger role in Hannibal.
Yes. By different actor.
This actor actually died of AIDS by the time, and was part of the reason Jonathan Demme made Philadelphia. And this actor is in Philadelphia. I should, instead of just keep saying this actor, I should look up his name.
I know.
Ron Wouter.
Wouter. I knew it was a V.
Yeah, Silence of the Lambs, Philadelphia, Sex, Lies, and Videotape. But it's this really great transition that's almost done entirely through zooms. We got a zoom in on Roger Corman, then a zoom in on Krendler here, and meanwhile Lecter is being transported.
Yes.
So it is now 100% out of Jack Crawford and Clarice Starling's hands.
Yes.
And this is incredible when Lecter is pulled out of the plane in Memphis in this hangar. And he's got the iconic mask on. He's got his head lolled back and he's sort of looking up. And this was done in an imitation of an El Greco painting of Jesus.
I love
where
it.
his head is back and his eyes are up. And we see Charles Napier, who's a wonderful actor, who's also a Blues Brothers actor.
Yes.
He plays Lieutenant Boyle here. And we see immediately that he respects Hannibal Lecter. And that was the thing about Barney, is Barney respected Hannibal Lecter. And because of that,
they had a good relationship.
You respect it like you respect a gun.
Yeah.
It could kill you at any time.
And Barney in the novel is very concerned that the people who are taking control of Lecter will not respect him and will not understand him. And ultimately don't.
Yes.
But I really like that right off the bat, he comes up to him and says, I'm Lieutenant Boyle. Basically, like, we're going to be working together. So, you help me, I'll help you.
Right.
It'll be cool. The scene between Lecter and Senator Martin is so great because Lecter immediately is in control of the scene.
Completely.
And throws Clarice and Crawford under the bus. Like, hey, I won't waste time. Jack Crawford has already wasted enough of
so
Catherine's
much
time.
Of our time.
Hopefully she's still alive.
Yeah. Indeed.
Oh, he totally manipulates. And it is, he's, in the orange jumpsuit, with the straitjacket and that frightening, almost more monstrous than he is, mask on with the metal bars over his mouth.
The metal bars on the mouth.
Basically strapped onto, a dolly. And he's got the power.
Yes. And not only that, but he repeatedly needles the power, even to the person who is actually helping him. When he says, amputate a man's leg and he can still feel it tickling. Tell me, Mom, when Catherine's on the slab, where will it tickle you?
Well, he prefaces that with, did you breastfeed her?
Right.
And talks about how that toughens the nipples. And,
toughens
so he
the nipple.
already has this really uncomfortable
Like, how much is
discussion
she going to listen to?
about this intimate body part, and then asks her where she will tickle when the child from her womb
is on the slab. And through this entire moment, you hear a plane's engine spinning up. And it's getting louder and louder and higher pitched until she says, take this thing back to Baltimore.
She's had enough.
But then he hits her
gets
with the
last
information.
word.
It's when he gives him the description of Lewis Friend, our killer, and then, and Senator, love the suit.
Love your suit.
The little pass through when Clarice goes in to visit Lecter in Memphis, where we pass Chilton out in front of a huge collection.
Oh yes, getting all the attention.
Yeah. When he's deflecting the question of what Buffalo Bill's name is with, but my name is Frederick Chilton, and then the reporter next to him. And how do you spell that? Chilt. Yeah.
When he's making sure he tells everybody about his own unique insight that he used to figure this out.
Never would have happened without the
his own unique insight was
tireless effort of Frederick Chilton.
Yeah, he bugged the room. That was his unique insight.
Clarice has brought Lecter's drawings to him. I imagine Barney gave them to her.
Yeah. I don't think Chilton would have handed those over
Chilton's
ever.
Already in Memphis, so I bet.
But he would have been too full of himself or thinking
yeah.
about all the attention he was going to get to even pay any mind to any of Lecter's belongings.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Barney easily got a hold of them.
Oh, I definitely was thinking it was Barney, especially since it was it comes up later on that Barney has a lot of Lecter
He's
stuff.
collecting Lecter memorabilia.
Yes, which he sells on eBay later on.
In the
For
future.
lots of money.
Yes, exactly.
You do.
He has a very comfortable life thanks to Lecter memorabilia.
What pieces I didn't want to hold on to, I'd sell them too.
Exactly. So I could sort of see that, Barney kind of knows how to get the stuff to her. And, if I take it, I have a way.
And, go down there and make sure they're actually respecting Lecter.
Yes, because that's very,
not
very
fucking around here.
Very important to Barney.
It is.
He got it.
So this is the first time we get to see the really ridiculously elaborate setup they've got for Hannibal Lecter.
Little bird cage.
In this great hall that is draped with pageantry and
pageantry.
And,
I love it.
It looks like an old courtroom to me.
It does.
Yeah.
It what did you say it was?
It's Soldiers and Sailors Memorial and Museum.
Okay.
It is the exterior is quite spectacular. It's got huge pillars. It's like this old federal style building. I've actually never been inside of it. I've just driven past it many times and walked past it.
Well, the setup is actually something described in the book that Lecter's cell is a modular thing, that it could be assembled anywhere
like
and
Magneto.
be secure. Yes. just like Magneto. Though I believe
no metal objects should be left alone.
Indeed.
There you go.
I think the film version of Magneto owes an awful lot to
I know.
Hannibal Lecter. But so many films.
Even with the way that Loki's kept in Avengers, same thing.
And
totally Hannibal Lecter.
The villain in Skyfall and the Joker in Dark Knight. Really, we've been doing this ever since Lecter got transferred.
He started it all. He was doing it before it was cool.
He is the original hipster prisoner.
Yes.
He was in modular prisons before anybody knew what they were.
Exactly. It is a rather interesting choice.
And he's got the fancy furniture in there. He's got that old-fashioned swivel chair.
And come on now, the dividing wall for him going to the bathroom.
Oh, yeah,
prisoners don't get that.
and
But he was
not.
special
And
once he got there.
There are screws in that.
Oh yeah.
And the
Metal.
the giant cassette player they put on his desk.
Yes.
That could also be a weapon.
You could beat the crap out of somebody
There are
with
so
that.
many things in that cell that could be weaponized, and this is one of those things we're just asked to. No, it's the pen
Yes.
because the pen is mightier.
Then the tape
That's-
player.
Well, it's also more easily accessible. To be honest, for him to try to disassemble that.
With people watching him. Yeah,
That's true. He'd have to really hide
What
a
are
lot
those
of stuff.
called? There's a term for
it's a
those.
screen.
Oh, okay. All right. Room screen or room
Or
divider.
like a privacy room
Yeah,
divider,
yeah.
privacy screen.
It would take him time to disassemble that and get the screws out of it, but it wouldn't take him very long to use the tape recorder to bash somebody's head over.
But I think he's
But-
not looking to bash. I think he's
No.
looking to
Stab and
yeah,
get to carotid arteries and things like that.
exactly. He's
Well,
going to go out with finesse.
Surgical instrument. Not very a blunt tool person.
No.
When Clarice comes in, I really like the little exchange that she came because she wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And people will say
We're in love. I love that line.
And then we get the pity about poor Catherine, though. Tick-tock.
Tick-tock, yeah. It is a great exchange between the two of them, and especially coming up through all of that, seeing the crazy media blitz that's going on downstairs. She's trying not to be seen.
As inconspicuous as possible. No, I've questioned him before.
Yeah.
Oh, I just saw Dr. Chilton outside.
Yeah.
That didn't answer the question.
Well, she's doing what is the way how you do that.
Yeah.
You walk in, you own it.
Misdirection.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
You look like you belong there.
Exactly. And that's what she's doing. She's trying to be so confident and so straightforward and like offended that they don't know who, no, I'm supposed to be here.
I've questioned it before.
And it doesn't have them call the attention
Right.
of anyone else. Like they're going to sit there and go, maybe I'll get in trouble if we act like, we question her. And she's very, it's a frightening thing underneath, I'm sure, because at any given moment, someone who recognizes who she is, like Chilton does later on.
Well, when she comes in, Paul Krendler walks right by her.
Yeah, exactly.
She walks past Chilton on the way in. He's too full of his own thing.
Oh,
notice.
exactly. He wants to make sure they get his right side
Yes.
when they take the picture. She has a great exchange with the officer in the elevator where they say, he's some kind of vampire.
Yeah.
Some kind of vampire. And it's a great line.
They don't have a
name for what he is.
And that guy looks like slightly more talented and less broody James.
Yes, he
from
does,
Twin Peaks.
doesn't he?
He's got that same kitty face and the short
The
hair.
rebel without a
Yeah.
cause kind of look, but with significant more acting ability. So when you finally go in there and you have that exchange with them after all this sort of chaos that's going around her, it is kind of like an intimate moment. It gets very quiet, and he throws out that line, "People will say we're in love," and it's wonderfully intimate right there. And he takes a lot of opportunities to use that quiet, those little tick tock, tick tock.
Yeah. Well, because he is pissed because she did
Lie to
work
him.
with Chilton to lie to him.
Yeah.
And he bought it.
Oh yeah.
And that, for Hannibal Lecter, that's more offensive than if she tried to lie to him and he didn't buy it.
I'm sure he's on this sort of an uncomfortable fence for him because he's probably really mad that he was made a fool of, but she was good enough to make a fool of him.
Yeah. And he wants to get back to that story. He wants to know about the rancher and what happened there.
Oh yeah, but she points out that his anagrams are showing.
Yes, Lewis Friend, iron sulfide,
Fool's gold.
And we go back and forth. We get the exchange, the quid pro quo again here. And the interesting part about this scene is that now we have bars. Before we didn't have bars. And the very distinct decision to do the plexiglass was to eliminate the artifice and the distance between them with bars.
Also,
And so-
not have to shoot between them.
Well, yes. And it makes Hannibal more menacing, and especially when he's lit from above in that brilliant white costume that he argued for because
Yeah.
he's afraid of dentists.
Yeah. That
And
would-
so dentists wear all white.
Huh.
yeah.
And
I
so
thought it was a good color choice for the blood splatter.
Yeah,
Well,
it-
that-
yeah,
that
that
is-
too.
yeah.
But apparently that was where it came
Oh,
from.
okay.
Because
when
he thought
Lecter
doctors
looks
and
up and
dentists were
his
frightening.
face is white and his bottom half of his face is covered in the blood mass.
Oh, it's amazing.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And the splatters, little
Little
bits
tiny-
of splatters
yeah.
all
Mhm.
over him. No, yeah, it was a perfect canvas for that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to think that that wasn't the first choice. He was actually going to be in red or orange. That orange
No.
jumpsuit that he was in earlier was more than likely what he was. It
White
would-
was so much better.
It would not have had
as
the
a
weight.
big of an impact.
Oh,
No.
yeah.
It was perfect.
Yeah. So I'm so glad that he fought for that.
Yeah.
And went with it. Yeah.
And for not for the blood reason, but for the dentist
the
reason.
dentist
So-
reason. Yeah, he in an interview I saw with him, he said, "Yeah, I remember getting my tonsils out as a child, and they were dressed all in white, and that was very frightening. I had a frightening memory of that, and that's what he was trying to evoke. That way, you're afraid of dentists and you're afraid of doctors, and
Yeah.
he wanted to
That
get
white
that
coat
white
syndrome.
clinical. Yes, exactly. So it works really well
It
here
does.
because it's teasing your psyche. You've got things like that, like scary dentists or whatever doctor
And it's pretty common
experience. It's
here.
he's brightly lit in the center of this room with this intense downlight where they're still playing, a little bit of shadow in his eye every once in a while. Not quite like they did in the cell, but he has sort of that intensity. And then they go in for that tight coverage, and when they're going back and forth, he's higher up.
Mhm.
And the angle that they're taking because he's actually
On a
Elevated.
stage?
Yeah.
on a little stage. Exactly. He's very intense here because he's also playing that anger and that sort of, it seems there's a little bit of resentment in the back of being.
Well, his
Yeah.
entire delivery style is very terse until Clarice opens up to him. The discussion of coveting, and you see Hannibal actually disappointed that she's not getting
Yeah.
it. It's like, no,
Yeah.
he covets.
Yeah. He keeps repeating it like, well, if I change the words around, maybe she'll get it. What is it this man, what does he serve
Well,
by killing?
the throwing out of read Marcus Aurelius. It's like, well, sorry, Hannibal, that's not helpful right now.
Right. Not doing anything for me.
Anything specific, but he was prolific.
And I love how, when he actually gets frustrated, it's like, no, he covets.
Yeah,
He's like, when we covet what we see every day.
every day.
And we've just got that close up. We're all in Lecter's eyes at that moment.
And Clarice is what he covets there.
It's beautiful.
It
the
is.
way they play this.
And Clarice is trying just to get out of there with information. And he's like, no, you don't have any more vacations.
He wants his story.
Well, she's got nothing more to bargain with.
Yeah, that's what I say. He has no more vacations to sell.
So this story is amazing. And it's the lighting drops off behind Clarice as she's telling it, and we just go closer and closer, and we hardly cut it all between the two of them. Demi famously wanted to shoot this as another flashback.
They were going to put a
And we
flashback
would
in it.
see young Clarice and the lamb, and they had it all set up at a ranch in Montana to shoot this. And after he shot this take, he said, well, I guess we're not going to Montana,
Yeah.
because how on earth could you cut away from Jodie Foster?
that.
What could possibly have more impact in seeing this story than seeing her tell
No,
it?
the close up of her telling this story, there is nothing that is as intense and
Yeah.
as emotionally touching.
Because Jodie's also, she's in her own head. She's not even talking to him by the end.
No,
When-
she starts looking away.
When
Yeah.
she says,
Yeah.
and they were screaming, it's like she's there.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to be.
No.
because she is.
We see what's going on in her eyes and in her facial expression, and how she's kind of looking around, and in a way, like you said, like she's seeing it, but inside of her head, and that she can't even hold any eye contact with him. She's lost in this, and it's frightening. And just talking about that he's goading her on. What did you see?
Right. What time was it? What did it feel like?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's really interesting that this book and film gets its title from an abstract concept that actually is the successful capture of the serial killer, because that leads to her theoretically sleeping with silent lambs. And even when the title is almost said in the film, it's screaming of the lambs.
Yeah.
He says that twice in this scene. So it's a funny disconnect.
It's the line is implied.
Yeah.
Because all he says is, if you were able to save.
You think if you save poor Catherine.
Yeah. That you won't hear the screaming of it'll stop. But he never actually says,
the word silence.
Silence.
Never.
No.
It's a really cool thing, and it's one of those things that gives you the little jolt, because you always get a little jolt when they say the title in a film.
Right.
It's just like, hey, they said the title.
Yeah. But they don't. They just hint at it here.
They just hint at it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, she's pulled away by Chilton and some cops and George Romero.
And George Romero. Yeah.
The filmmaker who made
I never noticed
Night of the
was back
Living
there
Dead
before.
Yeah, he's I mean, Jonathan Demme clearly loves giving directors cameos.
Yeah.
John Waters was in Something Wild, and Roger Corman
and George shoots everything in Pittsburgh, and he was between Night of the Living Dead and Dark Half at this time. I think he probably started Dark Half already, because I thought it started in 90, but I think actually it started in 89. Came
so
on
probably
late.
this time.
Yeah. So it was sort of like, oh, George is in town. Why don't you just come over for a day and come be a character in the back of this pivotal scene?
Do me a solid, George. Yes. We do get a moment of Clarice returning to DC, that walking through the airport.
We can't miss the touch of the finger.
Touch, yes.
Oh,
we cannot leave that without giving it its moment that's due. That one moment
when Clarice rushes back with
to get her notes,
the drawing. Your case file.
Your case file, and she knows
there's a clue in
there's going to be a clue in there.
Because why would he give?
Why would
up?
he make that?
Why would he make such a big deal out of it? And she makes
and after all this time too
them.
that he's had it.
Yeah.
Well, and he knows at this point what is going to happen later tonight. He has his plan set. His escape is firm. So the fact that he gets to see Clarice again, and in this environment where he can actually talk to her, because he knows if he escapes and goes to see Clarice, she doesn't talk to him.
No.
She arrests him.
Yes.
But here he can talk to her. So it was very serendipitous that he was able to have this exchange.
So do you
with
think
her.
he had the forethought that she would come to see him, or do you think he was just going to leave his notes behind?
No, I think he knew that she would not give this up.
She was that tenacious.
Yeah.
As long as Buffalo Bill was out there, she was going to, in some way, shape, or form, come back. And I think he knew at that moment that even though he had to prompt her a lot, she was going to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And he is thrilled by that. And this is where you see his admiration for her, and that there is this sort of touching, if this killer can feel anything.
He has something resembling affection
for her. And it's just a little touch on the finger.
Yeah.
But for someone who's probably never touched anybody in the years that he's been in there, other than being manhandled to put in a straitjacket, that is probably very significant.
Again, though, I
him.
picture the long conversations he and Barney has as Barney is shaving him with a straight razor.
Right. Having just very deep philosophical conversation.
Yeah, I imagine they would.
Yeah. But it's a wonderful moment. It's very quick. You just see
it's electric. It really is. It's an intense thing to see.
Yeah.
The introduction of Goldberg variations
Yes.
into the film. In the novel, this is a really interesting thing, and I hadn't remembered this, is Hannibal actually uses Goldberg variations to slow his
Heart rate.
heart rate and enhance his processing of the scene. So he slows his heart rate down, and he's basically seeing things in slow motion. And so Goldberg variations is a nice meditative thing for him here. And we see little bits of that in the scene when he's cuffed and he sits down against the bars and leans his head against the bars.
That pose. Yeah, he leans his head back and in kind of a it almost looks like the
painting,
the El Greco painting. It's almost echoes that same look, but except his eyes aren't up. But it's very dramatic.
Well, I think he's trying to be as innocuous as he possibly can be. So he's not even making eye contact or speaking unless he's spoken to.
He's very polite.
He needs this to just go exactly the way it went yesterday, the day before. And if that happens, he can do this.
Exactly. Very calm. And that straight back, sort of unnatural way of standing works great here because he stands with his hands beside his body in a way that most of us don't. But it also gives us that opportunity to see the gold clip
and to do the quick
fingers.
zoom, just like, by the way, if you didn't get it,
right,
this is where it's going to happen.
Yeah, remember that pen we kept showing you over and over and over again?
And zoomed in on?
Right. But you haven't seen it in a while. So
That's
you may
true.
have forgotten it by this point.
I like how Pembry, he doesn't respect Lecter.
Oh, no, he gets to get a second meal. Who the hell is this guy?
Both of them are complaining about it, but Boyle still, Pembry's not even paying attention. Mm-hmm. He's standing sort of playing with the keys and
it's
just
way too close to Hannibal's face.
Yeah.
No, Pembry's the one who's standing in the doorway.
In the door.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Boyle's he sets
Boyle is more serious about what he's doing.
He sets the drawings down. He's the one who welcomed Lecter to Memphis. And so he's doing everything he's supposed to be doing with the understanding that Lecter is going to be the model prisoner he promised he'd be.
Right.
But Pembry's just standing in an open doorway looking at his keys. I don't know.
Like you wish he was doing something else other than being stuck with this guy.
At one point, then, is it Boyle that gets too close to his face? Because one of them gets really close to his face.
Boyle's the one who leans down and then gets handcuffed.
Before that, though, like... Oh, maybe it's right when he bends down.
He's putting the drawings down.
But even if Hannibal didn't have a way out of his handcuffs, he could have easily bitten him.
That's true.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have gone well for a handcuffed Hannibal to bite him, though. I mean, if he wants to see how quickly all these privileges get taken away, that's how you do it.
Yeah, that's how you lose your toilet.
Yeah.
I'm just saying
you lose the privacy screen.
Yeah.
As the officer who would have been bitten.
Right.
Regardless of what happens after that, it would have.
But poor Boyle is not the officer that gets bitten because he gets handcuffed to the cell.
The cell, yeah, and it's Pembry.
Then Pembry gets the charge, and the monster comes out there.
Yeah, and that's a great transformation because we've seen this very calm, the posing Hannibal. Mind the drawings. I love that picture of Clarice with the lamb. I hope someone has that up like in their office somewhere. It is so awesome. But everything leading up to it, you watch him do the handcuff thing, and then he turns into an animal.
Well, and only for a moment, which is what's really brilliant and what's so frightening about it is after he does his, shaking the head, like ripping of the skin, then he's calm again as he maces him.
Yeah.
And he's really calm, like frighteningly calm as he beats Boyle to death with a baton.
Which is also so frightening because his face has gone blank again. You only get to see that monster for a moment. Mm-hmm. And then the way he picks up the baton
it's
kind of
musical.
circles it is. and you know what's coming, and it's all Boyle's POV, and that's what, because you feel like he's going to beat me with this.
Yeah.
And when he starts coming down with the billy club and they start flicking the blood at him, it's terrifying because you are Boyle at that moment.
Yeah. We're sitting there as the audience having a billy club come down to us.
Yeah.
And afterwards, he does that glorious look up into the lights where we see the blood mask on him. And he's back to the music. He's just conducting the music. And the only thing that takes him out of it is hearing Pembry whimpering and crawling away. And he does this great thing where he's just like, where'd he go?
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, I'm not done with you
Oh,
yet.
you're over there. Okay, here's a knife. And the ready when you are, Sergeant
Yes.
Pembry. That freaked me out so much when I first saw this.
When I heard the sound of Pembry sort of struggling and crawling, all I could think of was the scene in Florence.
Oh yeah,
where they had the conversation, and
Anthony is desperately trying to get to the other end of the room.
That's what I was seeing in my head, was that the blood smear and the crawl, and I knew that's what Pembry was doing.
This is a really unique part of any movie, but right here, for about 10 minutes, we are given over to an entirely new cast.
Oh yeah, all the officers.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
There's a lot of them
because we've lost every single member of our cast at this point.
Yeah,
and we follow the Sergeant Tate and his dramatic
amazing mustache. It looks like it's floating across his face. It needed its own credit at the end of the film.
Salvador Dali would have been very, very excited about that. His mustache cannot be contained by his lip, according to my notes.
No, it can't.
But this is such a risky move because you're giving it over to second tier, because they are second tier.
And almost all of them are unrecognizable.
Except for Chris Isaacs. Which is bizarre.
Exactly. Being badass,
and this is Chris Isaacs' second film appearance at this point, and so he was still very new. And then he went on the next year to do Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me. So he's coasting by on, hey, it's Wicked Games guy.
Right, exactly.
But these moments here are unusual and are kind of weak. I felt like the cops way overreact to the elevator moving.
Yeah.
And holy shit.
Yeah.
It's like the elevator's coming. You haven't even heard gunshot. What are you reacting to?
Yeah.
Because everyone's really freaked out.
I think there's a procedure that we are not privy to at this point. Whether it was shot or they decided to.
And at that point, it's who's up on 5? Yeah. What's going on?
They haven't really established.
And then you walkie in before you freak out in the lobby. With
and
a holy shit. Yeah.
They all
totally
got their guns out and they're like, and then when it moves again, they all freak out again. It's like,
and then they hear gunshots. So then, okay, now you're right. Now you should freak out.
Yeah.
Before that, be on guard. Jack Crawford would not get freaked out. He'd be on guard.
Maybe, it's a dig at local cops.
It could be.
That they are not
they are
ready.
Just Memphis
They're
police.
Just Memphis police, and maybe they were trying to handle something that was a little over their head.
So we have a tableau, and this is amazing.
Oh, it is.
When they go in there, and we talked about this probably on the first few episodes of the Rudecast.
Well, because we had the angel in the alleyway, and the way it was backlit was very much like this scene.
And the question has always been whether or not this is actually what it looked like. And Demi has somewhere, not on the commentary, because I just rewatched that, somewhere said, or maybe I dreamed it, I don't know, that the idea was this is what it looked like to the first guy who went in. This is the image that he will be haunted by for the rest of his life. That's why it's got that dramatic backlight. It's sort of, they fogged the room.
Yeah.
It's far more dramatic than it may have actually been.
Yeah.
But we get Lieutenant Boyle strung up like a butterfly.
Yeah.
With his unzipped torso.
Yes. Disemboweled. He's pretty gruesome.
It is. And, Sergeant Tate's response is so great because it's so minimalist. Just, oh, God.
Yeah.
It's perfection.
Yeah. Because you almost can't process it.
Yeah. What can you say to match that?
Yeah. You've got the bloodied body on the floor, Boyle strung up, and just terrible things done to him.
Yeah.
And again, we're talking about local police who probably, I'm sure have seen dead bodies and seen mutilations,
but nothing
like this.
Yeah.
Or even fathom that this is possible. This is a man caged. And in a short period of time, just inflicted some violence.
He took control of the situation.
Totally. And it's almost like they don't know what to do. I wrote down here, not great at the pep talk.
When he's talking to...
you look real good. You look real
great.
good.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. These guys.
That's Jim Pembry. Talk to him.
Exactly. It's like they're trying to deal with the situation, and
then one cop just goes and sits down at the table.
I saw that. Yeah, that was weird.
Well, everything about this scene was hilarious because it just seemed like they
have no idea.
They don't know what to do. They're in shock.
Yeah.
Mustache dude Tate is like trying to get a handle on the situation, and he's wrangling just like cats at this point. And it is, and then they have the young guy who can't figure out what to say. And it's hilarious. You look so good. You look good. And he's gargling blood.
This is an issue that I have that I think may be colored by the fact that I saw it so early and don't remember my first time through. But I've always felt that that Lecter wearing the Pembry mask just looks an awful lot like Anthony Hopkins. And so even they're lying on the floor, it's like I don't see the ruse.
The fake face.
I look at that and see, well, but that's clearly Hannibal Lecter. I mean, I was
fooled when I first saw this movie. I was not expecting him to sit up in that ambulance and pull his face off. That was like oh my God.
That is one of the most amazing things as the music is building, just the way he takes off the thing, and it's just Hannibal Lecter. Oh, yeah. And it's just like, here's Johnny.
Totally. Because he has kind of a terrifying grin on his face when he does it. But man, when this first came out, I do remember falling for that. And I don't know whether it was just I was distracted by all the other stuff that was going on. Yeah. It's the way it's lit. You don't really see him very clearly. Everything is leading you down this road.
I just thought of something.
Yes.
Do we really see any violence in this entire movie on screen except for Pembry's face bite?
That's it. And you don't really even see Pembry's face bite.
Yeah. It's blocked by Pembry.
Yeah.
So Boyle's beaten to death off camera.
Right, that is off camera. You see the aftermath.
You see a lot of aftermath in this movie.
And really the aftermath is just him lying there in a pool of blood.
Yeah.
His arm is covering most of his upper torso.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But even James Gunn's death is in the dark.
Oh, yeah.
He falls after being shot, but we don't see him get shot. We don't see him hit Catherine Martin. That takes place inside the van.
Yeah.
It's really interesting when you think about that, how you would thinking about the movie.
We see them shoot Hannibal's or fake Hannibal's leg, Boyle's leg.
That is a script shot. We do see a script shot. Yeah.
We see that.
Yeah. But that's on an already dead body.
Yeah,
Right,
so
right.
No violence happens to living people on camera.
To living
I think
people.
that might have been the part where I realized that wasn't Hannibal.
When he didn't move at all.
When he didn't move. I'm
Yeah.
like, that's not him.
But that's when you start going, oh my God,
Yeah.
what? Yeah, and very quickly afterwards, it's like that's when he
And then
starts
they-
moving. You're like,
Yeah.
oh my God, look!
And then you think about, well, who just got rushed away on a stretcher?
Right. And we go, and what's great about this is they don't let us put it together. They hit us with it immediately. It's like, okay, the leg shot didn't work. What's going? Oh, ambulance. Oh,
you don't have a whole lot of time to
Because
process
Hannibal's
it.
too smart to just die on top of an elevator. No
Yeah.
way.
it would be a
No
very
way.
unusual movie if that was the end of the Hannibal Lecter
I think
arc.
I thought
Right.
either he did some sort of switch or that was somebody else's body, just anybody else's.
Anybody-
like
yeah.
That- he
another
killed-
police officer,
sure.
another guard, another person who was just standing there in the hallway.
Right, he could have killed any other
Just to
person up
change
there and
clothes.
switched
Yeah.
clothes, and then
right.
dumped
And
the body.
then maybe he's climbing up to the roof and he's going to start doing roof jump
Well, they
parkour or
did- they
something
did-
crazy.
He
Not
could
that,
probably do it.
not that I knew what parkour was when I saw this movie. I don't
But
think
they
that
did
was around
say
yet.
that he stripped the bed. He's probably making a rope.
a rope. Yeah,
I mean,
they did
yeah.
lead you down.
That he was
road.
somewhere else. I didn't
Yeah.
necessarily know he was absolutely in the
Yeah.
ambulance, but I knew that he got away and that was not his body on top of that elevator.
And really what made it stand out, the fact that we don't see any violence, is thinking about he gets up, he walks towards the guy in the ambulance, and then we cut to Ardelia dropping the phone and running. And that alone is somehow so much more intense than anything he could have done to that ambulance
Yeah.
driver.
You don't see him do anything to the
You
ambulance
just see
driver.
the ambulance swerve.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's dialogue
Yeah.
later
It's
on.
so good.
And this entire movie is like that. That's why I find it so interesting that they were talking about how I don't want to be involved in this violent film that actually doesn't show a whole lot of violence. It's all
But-
implied, but does it so
All
well.
psychological.
It
You
could
think of
have
it as a violent
shown
film.
all the violence.
Yeah.
It was a choice as a director to
not do it.
that.
But they probably were afraid that all that stuff was going to be
Sure.
very graphic and very gruesome. And I'm so glad that he didn't, because it is so, I think that's why it's so much more effective as a thriller than it is as a straight out slasher movie.
Well, it is what elevates the film above what the trailer implies it is, because it's a film that is so confident that it doesn't need the extra titillation. It doesn't need nudity in it. It doesn't need gore in it. And even the gore it does have is so minimal.
Yeah.
Like we see Lieutenant Boyle up on the cage, but we see him from far away and
Yeah.
in shadows.
And it's true. It's like you don't really see him very clearly
Yeah.
because of that backlight and the way things are foggy, and they don't really do that much of a close up.
And we don't go the full Hellraiser and see Pembry's face when they open the hatch.
Yeah.
It's remarkably subtle.
Yeah. It's
And
very
it just makes
restrained.
me appreciate it all the more.
Yeah. There's when in the documentary I watched, it was cool because they showed how they did the scene where Hannibal is like gnawing at Pembry's face. They took two like bites, mouth
guards?
yeah, mouth guards, and attached them together. They were made so that they were attached, and basically each actor bit into this mouth guard that was attached together, so that Anthony Hopkins could move his face and pull it around, and Pembry's face would react to it,
Right,
Yeah.
right.
like his teeth were embedded in his face.
Genius.
Yeah, and then they
That's
showed
awesome.
the shot from like another angle, and you see Hopkins shaking his head, and Pembry's, and you see the bite that's in between them,
Yeah.
and that's all it is their faces. I mean, their like lips are like right next to each other, but he was able to get that. He's actually jerking,
His head around.
That's
his head
awesome.
around with this little device.
And before we leave this scene, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about an outtake. That is Anthony Hopkins from a low angle with the knife when he's going to talk to Pembry, but he's doing Sylvester Stallone
Yes!
as Rocky, and he talks about,
awesome.
"I'm going to
Yeah.
cut you now. We're going to do it." Rocky 5, and he is much better at Stallone than I am. It's amazing. Anthony Hopkins, all the love.
This one is for you, Adrian. Now you, Polly. Let's go for it. Rocky 5. Let's do it now. Guy goes on the fucking box.
This is the scene we get to see Clarice in her jammies.
You love her jammies.
I do love her
you?
jammies. They look like someone who's pure West Virginia.
West Virginia pajamas.
Yeah.
That you should
Very
market that.
homey.
Not more than one generation from poor white trash.
Wow.
Aw.
No, it's just they're real person pajamas.
Yeah.
They're not movie pajamas or even worse, absurdly rich television characters
Yes.
pajamas. You know, it's nice to see attention to realistic looking details.
Yeah.
Like when they were at the funeral home and you saw that cluster of high school girls come up. Those high school girls, they wandered out of a school in 1990, and I wouldn't be surprised to hear if one of the school buses just came around and said, "We're filming a movie. We need some girls.
Just drop them off.
Just jump in," and then drop them off.
There was an assortment. There were boys there too.
Okay, but they all look very natural.
Yes, high school students.
You just couldn't see them because of all the hair.
Yes.
There was
Of the girl.
The acid wash.
I saw those camo pants. They were not hiding. Loud and clear.
Well, if you saw them, they were not doing their job.
Exactly. They were not in the woods, though, to be fair.
Well, true. I like Clarice's confidence that he won't come after her.
Because he would consider it rude.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think this is the first foray we get into the
rude.
The rude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the name of our podcast.
Yes.
We get another one of those scenes where they're looking directly at the camera as the girls solve it, and they're being very clever and they're being very engaging here, and we're seeing what Hannibal saw in Clarice, and the way she parrots Hannibal's notices, first principles, simplicity. How do we first begin to covet?
Yeah. She kind of takes his point of view at this point of throwing out those lines and thinking about it's in here.
Yeah.
He told me it's in here.
And don't these look desperately random, like the elaborations of a bad liar?
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
It's a great moment between her and
Ardelia.
In Ardelia.
It's one of the things that really made me miss the character of Ardelia, who is in the book and who isn't.
It's so
in
important
Hannibal.
to
And
Clarice,
we'll
too.
talk about this, I'm positive, next week. The fact that they just strip everyone from Clarice. There is no one on her side except Hannibal Lecter. And I get that that's what they're trying to do, but they didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
It was enough to have her have some people on her side and still be going up against the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
And losing Jack Crawford and having to deal with Paul Krendler. But losing everybody. And really, I mean, I'm sure Cassie Lemons was directing a movie, but they probably could have lured her back for one scene.
Exactly. Just for a little bit.
Yeah, it would have been nice.
Yeah. It would have. There was a great interview with her talking about these extreme close-ups. She was so nervous, and I noticed this when I watched it. I thought it was just she's getting so emotional because they're getting close to figuring it out, and her lip quivers. Her lip quivers actually because she was so terrified of having the close-up be that close. She was unnerved by it, and she actually says that in the interview. She says, "My lips started to quiver because I was terrified of having the camera that close because that never happens." And now she's like, "Oh, it works, so well." But to go back and then like see it, they after they did that little segment of the interview, they showed that moment, and it was like it's so interesting to look at it now and know that was the actress like going, the camera's really close. This lens is it's so tight.
And this is the only scene where they miss the focus in these close-ups, because when you shoot a close-up like this, you have a very, very shallow range of focus. And in this shot, the focus is just behind Jodie's eyes.
Yeah.
So they are slightly out of focus, and that's a notable mistake.
Yeah.
But obviously, low budget film, shot quick. You can't always fix these things.
Yeah, and considering how much they do this close-up coverage in this entire film, the law of averages, you almost couldn't possibly do it all perfectly, especially with time constraints and things like that. Or they could have shot it several times, and the one that came out with the best acting
was
is the one that has
the
slightly out of focus. So they talk about how he knew the first.
Frederica Bimmel, the first victim, the third one found.
Yeah,
and he must have known her.
That's how they finally start having the information click.
So Clarice goes to Belvedere, Ohio, and this is another one of those really cold and wet places.
Yes,
everything about this looks cold. There's that one shot of the woman just looking out her window.
I loved all these little establishing shots of this town. It made it.
It's just unsettling.
It's like every day, but in a weird sort of like uncomfortable way. Yeah,
this is a town ravaged by a serial killer. It is. It looks like the town is hurt by this.
Right.
You feel an overwhelming, and I always feel like this when we see these, the blue filter, the wet look, the overcast skies. It feels sad.
Yeah.
It feels low income and sad.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so you really feel the poorness.
Even if you look at the way of the street and in the lawns, how they're sort of miskept and there's trash on the sidewalk and
they don't have sidewalks predominantly. It's just the street goes to the grass.
It just looks dirty.
It does.
What I'm saying. It looks dirty. It looks run down. It doesn't look like people. It's not a manicured lawn anywhere.
Yeah. You have poor Mr. Bimmel and his pigeons.
Run down
in the rundown
house. Yeah.
Yeah. And his knit cap.
With the trailer out the back.
Yeah, exactly.
So Clarice finds some dirty Polaroids in Frederica's bedroom. And I did review this. This was something that was in Catherine Martin's bedroom.
Yeah, we couldn't remember at the time. Yeah.
And it's a very unsettling thing because it's not in any way what you expected to see there.
Oh, no, especially with the bedroom's exactly the way she left it.
Yeah.
And it's very much this sweet, young, high school girls, room with all the little tchotchkes that are on there and her pet cat.
And the music box that doesn't work that way.
I know, that was a weird choice there.
If you slowly stop a music box from singing, it does not change the pitch of the music.
It just slows down. That was odd. It's like... I don't know what the sound designer was thinking there.
Music boxes do not work that way.
They don't work that way. Or they were trying to make it sound kind of
ominous.
Mm-hmm. And she pulls the paper backing of the lid, and you find the Polaroids, and they're not like terribly titillating.
Not really at all.
But
no.
they're
almost aggressively untitillating.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with the model. It has to do with the
poses.
The poses, the Polaroid issue, which is things are probably going to be out of focus in your Polaroid.
It was as though someone was trying to be sexy without having ever seen other people pose in porn or whatever.
Yeah. There's an innocence
a
to
magazine.
It.
Yeah, exactly. Like somebody who is barely getting into their own sexuality.
And the rollers in the hair.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that she seems rather shy in the photos. She's looking over her shoulder.
Demure, yeah.
Yeah, like, I can't believe I'm doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it is. They're not lurid in any way.
No, it has nothing to do with the subject. It's just how the pictures, or how she was posing in the pictures.
Yeah.
It was very kind of clumsy.
Yeah. Really makes you feel for her.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very vulnerable thing.
Mm-hmm.
a very young, very unexperienced, very
Probably doing them at the behest of someone else, not for
Right.
her own
Oh,
purpose.
yeah,
but
definitely,
is so happy that
definitely,
someone's
yeah.
paying attention to her.
right.
Yeah.
There's an innocence and a unfulfilled life that you get out of those pictures.
Oh yeah.
So now in the book, Hannibal tells Clarice he wants a vest with tits on it. In the movie, a cat lures her into the sewing room
Yes.
to show her the darts on the back of a dress.
It's again that they love doing these like slow. Where she's looking around the room. You want her to find something before we leave. She's looking out the window. Who can?
It's like, because this
you
is
see
just
what you
desperation
covet.
at this
Yeah,
point.
she's trying to figure out: is there a window that looks in her room?
Is there a neighbor?
There's nobody there. There's no, and she's and the cat, and then she walks into the other room, and the way she runs her fingers on the, and it. Then there's the dress, and then you have the swell of the music, and you realize,
Dun, dun, dun.
yeah,
And Jack Crawford is in a very expensive plane console there with the red light, which is Tak Fujimoto, the cinematographer, one of his hallmarks. And it's it's like, look at technology. Where like earlier in the film, look, technology, Filofax.
Yes. The fax machine
When he's trying to get the six-way hookup.
Yeah, the special machine that the cops have. And it's like this big, gigantic, clunky machine.
It's a drum scanner, isn't it?
That's what it looks like. Yeah, it's gigantic.
When we first see Buffalo Bill naked sitting in his chair in front of the sewing machine, on the floor next to him there's like a board, and it's got the darts
on it.
there on
really?
the board.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the piece that he's sewing has the same gusset shape in it.
And
then,
looks like the paper pattern that you would cut out, and it kind of looks like it's the skin nailed to the board.
And that
Sitting
very
down.
well could be.
yeah,
down on
it
the
could
ground.
very well. Yeah.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
So Jack Crawford has a nice headshot of Ted Levine here.
Oh yes, nice.
His
He's
high
ready
school
for
picture.
his. It made me think of the photos people take when they move up in a company and they get like an executive position.
Yeah.
Pretty much everybody
Employee
does it
of the
now.
month.
Yeah, everyone has their employee photo now, and it's like you get to see the CEO.
He's on the wall.
Yeah, that's it. Totally like.
Hey, James.
Exactly.
How you doing? What are you doing after work today?
Here's James, our vice president.
Oh, I'm keeping a girl in a pit.
Oh my god!
The key is you just stick your tongue back in your
I
mouth.
can't do it. I have tried. I'm not even
going to try.
I have tried. I just sound foolish every time I do it. I'm not going to try.
But there is something delightfully bizarre about this businessman headshot.
Yeah.
It is.
And then
it does
we
not
go
match him.
To gum. Yeah.
It doesn't even match the character as described by Hannibal that we would discover. You know, it's just, you wouldn't expect to get a clean cut picture at all.
Right.
Even if we hadn't seen him, with his messy long hair.
And it is kind of funny because we go to him putting the makeup on.
Yeah.
And everything after Mr. Clean Cut looking like he's,
how long ago was that taken?
When this sequence is so memorable and so unsettling for so many reasons.
Yes.
And one of which is we sort of start with another moving camera thing as Catherine is setting the trap for Precious.
Yes.
And it's a good plan on her part.
Yeah.
Throw the bucket up there.
It almost worked.
Yeah.
She's a smart
It does
cookie.
work.
Well,
She
I mean,
gets
it almost
Precious.
works the first time.
Yeah.
And here we have Q Lazarus with "Goodbye Horses,"
Everybody loves
which
this
I
song
have.
now.
I have on as one of my ringtones on my phone. It's great. It's weird. It's very similar to the Crying Game song, and it's in that same kind of tonality and that same kind of slightly unsettling.
Yeah, it's kind of hypnotic.
Yeah. So the first part of this we see is he's putting on eye makeup, and we see the raggedy scalp above his
the
eyes.
edge of the skin.
That was clearly cut with a stabbing motion,
Yes.
because it's cut.
It's cut
at
like
straight edge angles there.
Like he had a box cutter.
Yeah.
It's unnerving. With
And
the little
Do
red
we see
edges.
the tattoo yet?
Yeah, this
Yeah,
is where we
this is
see
where
the
we see the
tattoo. With
tattoo.
the Jesus stab wound
Yeah.
tattoo.
And the love on his hand.
Mm-hmm.
This is this whole montage where you get to see all like the bits and pieces of him.
Yeah.
Him
As
putting on
he's-
his bits of jewelry.
The pierced
Yeah.
nipples.
And
The
would you fuck me? I'd fuck me.
Now you actually get to do that in
I'd
context.
fuck me.
I never thought we'd ever get
Yeah,
here.
he does it all the time.
Exactly. That's why I point this out.
Right.
Is that usually
This
it's
is
always
this
out
is
of
the
context.
first time it has ever been appropriate.
Exactly.
I don't know. I feel like we've had a discussion about Hannibal that you've thrown it in there. That's at least, related.
This is actually referencing
This is
the actual
specifically-
moment
Yes.
that he's
Yes.
Relevant,
doing.
yes.
Yeah.
This is the most relevant it has ever been. We'll say that. The most
This
relevant.
is a significant moment
It
in
is.
your James Gum.
And
Impersonation.
the full. I can go the full gum. Here.
Yeah.
You can
Finally
throw it all,
go the
pull out
full
all the
gum.
stops.
And when he dances in his amazing Technicolor dream coat he's got there.
His lovely kimono
Yeah.
that Ray Fiennes should have had.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
it would have
yes.
been glorious.
Dragon.
Instead of his bland navy
Yeah.
blue, perfectly ironed.
Yeah.
No.
Like bland. Yeah.
And it's funny. This is, when in a society that's vaguely uncomfortable with homosexuality,
Mhm.
which we are in a society that is vaguely
Yes.
uncomfortable, sometimes not so vaguely. This is a scene that people talk about because it makes them even more uncomfortable. The tucking
Yes.
thing is very unsettling for people.
Oh yeah.
And it's funny because in the book, it's almost a non-thing.
Right.
He gets out of the shower and he doesn't want to see his genitals, so he jams them between his legs with a mop, I believe.
I don't remember.
I don't remember that.
No?
Oh wow.
Maybe inventing stuff. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I don't
Debbie
know.
orig-
I don't know. Could
Yeah,
be.
originally wasn't had not put this in the script.
But it works so well here.
Ted Levine brought it up.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
is. It's
It
great
works.
to have this.
And
movie.
it gives him his
Yeah.
butterfly pose.
Yeah.
This is what he's becoming. He has completed.
It's a little bit of a Christ-like pose too.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, yes. Absolutely.
It's him. Exactly. He's presenting.
to his VHS camera.
He's just exactly.
Yeah, I'm
backup
thinking
singers that are the
of the
mannequins.
FBI, file guy.
Uh-huh.
Because they're not so concerned after they catch him. It's like, okay, catalog this stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He puts the video and is like, well, this is unsettling.
Right. It's a guy.
I did not expect that.
Yeah. Who's the person putting on makeup? And can you imagine, like, if it was just the close up and you don't know
Yeah.
what the payoff is going to be at the end? You just see blonde wig and makeup, and and they're like, oh, a little bit of a nipple, and you're like, oh, we're gonna see something here. We're gonna see, and you pull back, and it's like, oh,
That is not what I thought it
that's
was
not
looking
what
at.
I was expecting.
And for everybody's enjoyment, they should watch the scene from Clerks 2 where
Oh yes.
Jay does this very same thing. And
Oh, it's so good.
And it's sort of like off camera. It starts on camera where Silent Bob plays the Goodbye Horses,
Yep.
and Jay goes, oh, and puts on this chapstick, really sexy. But then we cut to another scene, and it's brilliant because then someone walks by, and Jay is standing there in the butterfly pose with his genitals tucked, and it's so out of nowhere. It's great.
It's
I
awesome.
Just
love
wonderful.
Kevin Smith.
It's so awesome.
There's another very real. All the bit parts are really filled by actors who nail realism.
Oh yeah.
Like her when Clarice is talking to Frederica's friend Stacy.
Yes, with her ultra short bangs.
Yes. And I love we're getting information, but it doesn't feel like it's being fed to us. It also doesn't feel like it's going to be that helpful.
No.
Especially since we know that Jack Crawford is already on his way to get James Gumb in Calumet City.
Yeah, Stacey kind of talks in circles.
She does.
Yeah, and not very teenagery.
Yeah,
But
like
I
when
like-
she calls her friend.
Yeah, what a dummy. Yeah.
Dummy.
She thought she was hot shit. What a
Yeah.
dummy.
No, she thought
Thought
her
the bank
job,
was
The
hot
bank,
because
shit.
she
Yeah.
had a job at
Yeah.
the bank, and her
What was
and
it? Something-
Frederica thought she was hot.
Like
shit.
free toasters and Barry Manilow
Barry
on
Barry
the soundtrack.
Manilow over the loudspeaker.
Was Barry Manilow still famous in 1991?
I think that's,
I don't
but no,
know.
that's the joke. Is that
at the time when
he was
worked
famous enough to be
Muzak.
Muzak, because that's what grown-ups were listening to. But for someone her age,
and she's working at a bank,
Yeah.
so she's definitely catering to an older crowd. It's
Exactly.
a bank.
That's why you
banks
would-
do not play hip music. They just don't.
No. Yeah,
This-
Barry Manilow remains relevant for quite a long time.
Well, I'm not discounting Barry Manilow's relevance. I'm discounting it towards 18-year-olds.
But sometimes getting that full-time job seems like the ticket out.
Yeah.
Or
Exactly,
the ticket
in
to
yeah.
this kind of
adulthood.
town.
And I'm
in this
sure
t- yeah.
considering a banking job amidst working retail or working in the
Oh, yeah.
mall,
Yeah.
this must have seemed very.
When this
upper
is so
class.
early in such a small place, there would be a strip mall at best.
Mhm.
You'd have to go to real town
Yeah.
Yeah.
to get the mall. The
so
mall
it was
would
probably the highest someone could climb
be sure.
without a proper education in this
Yeah.
town.
This intercutting between James Gumb's basement and the Calumet City house is amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is such a great bit of misdirection, and it is so terrifying when you recognize that the misdirection has happened.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
You're
amazing
like,
that they get they get to fool us again,
Yeah,
because we've already done misdirection back in Memphis.
yeah.
And they're like, guess what? We're going to do
It's
it
even
again.
bigger, and now I'm
Yeah.
putting Clarice in danger.
Exactly.
The sequence here is so intense between James Gumb and Catherine,
Yeah.
because she's got Precious down there in the pit,
Mm-hmm.
and
I don't know why I love that. Precious in the Pit.
Precious in the Pit. It's a great band name.
Oh.
Precious and the Pit is also a great band name, or Edgar Allan Poe story.
Edgar Allan Poe's The
Precious in the Pit.
in the Pit.
Wow.
That should be
Interesting.
the sequel to Hannibal.
The
It should be
Pit
called
and
The
the
Precious
the
and
In
the
the
Precious.
Pit.
Yeah.
Someone has to do like a really brilliant short.
The Precious and the Pit.
Precious,
Yeah. The delivery, especially "You don't know what pain is."
Yeah. Very important.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she is just doing whatever she needs to do
Oh,
to
yeah.
get out.
Yeah.
And
This is a really strong girl.
Yeah.
This is a strong girl, the likes of which he has probably not encountered
Yeah.
before. And what's,
She's not playing helpless
Right.
and not thinking about how to get herself or she's not so disabled by fear that she can't think of a way out of this situation. She's
planning immediately.
right.
Yeah.
She's looking for that way out. She's resourceful. She's intelligent enough to figure out, okay, where do I have power? I have power if I can do this.
Right.
yeah. What's important to him?
Yes.
What can I probably manipulate him with?
Yes.
And Precious is pretty much it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't make me hurt your dog.
And don't you make me, don't you hurt my dog.
Don't you make me hurt your dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's
She's hurt real bad.
She's hurt real
yeah,
bad,
Mister. I love that. And he's going to shoot her. And he goes and gets the gun, and we see it's like this escalates so quickly.
Yeah.
And then the doorbell, and we think, okay, well, the FBI is going to stop
That's
this.
a very interesting doorbell.
Oh, yeah,
too.
here's-
The
here's,
bell with the
alarm bell.
and it has that shocking
Yeah.
light
Yes,
where it
yes.
looks like an electric shock.
Yeah, like a taser's coming
Yes.
out of it.
It's a bit overdone.
Yeah.
Just a touch.
Just a touch.
But I think to me, it kind of gives him more of a maniacal.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you see,
Picture of
especially thinking that the Calumet City House is where they are, that that house up top is just like bland, generic cookie cutter house. And then down below, it's a dungeon.
The depths of
Yeah.
hell.
Yeah.
And that's really a great dichotomy there.
Yeah, to have the beautiful suburban house and the guy with the flowers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the flower guy.
I love how when the
and Jack is running up alongside
when the van comes up and they're behind running up behind the van, and they're all he's the cops in the clean cut delivery guy, sort of outfit, and it's just like, and then when he presses that doorbell, you get that ugly, the almost mad scientist.
Yeah.
That's
exactly. Like
sort
a
of
Tesla coil
spark
next to it or something crazy.
And then down below, all of a sudden, it's James with his gun is like, oh shit!
What do I do? What do I do?
Yeah.
And then it's Clarice.
And his house is filthy.
Yeah.
His house is
Oh
filthy,
my
and that
gosh.
house was just for sale. And so wanted to buy it.
Yeah, I know you sent me the link, and I was like,
we should move to Pittsburgh.
But it's actually really far outside of Pittsburgh, so you'd be like in the contract.
Well, and that basement is not attached to that house.
No.
That is a set built elsewhere.
Yeah,
So
Pittsburgh
we
has
wouldn't get the basement.
We
with
wouldn't get the
well.
pit.
No, you wouldn't get the
We wouldn't
pit.
get a pit.
We wouldn't be able to recreate Precious in the Pit.
Yeah,
We wouldn't be able to go, you put solution on its skin or else it gets those again.
I would be doing that every day.
I was going to say the neighbors would be like, "Ah, damn it, he's doing it again."
Don't you hurt my
Goodbye
dog.
horses blasting out the windows.
Yes.
Ding.
You with a brightly colored kimono.
Yeah.
Going out to get the
dancing.
mail every day.
Every day, dancing.
Down to the mailbox.
Got your necklaces
Yeah.
on and your frosted lipstick and your nipple pierced. Just dancing.
Like I would get a letter from the homeowners association. I think
They would be asking you
it's
to
like
move.
Yeah.
we realized this house was used in the film Silence of the Lambs.
But the
We would
movie's over now.
appreciate if every day wasn't Silence of the Lambs at this house. You have lambs in the yard. We don't know what that's about.
This is just too much. You have to tone it down.
You have to move. I have 100 signatures here
Right. Exactly.
that are asking for you
We
to be
will
removed.
pay you to move.
This is a family neighborhood.
Yeah, family community.
Here.
Oh, dear.
We can't have you in your kimono.
That's my amazing
Figure
Technicolor dream coat.
Oh boy, that went so wrong.
The Jodie Foster has a really interesting analysis of the encounter with James Gumb here. Is that the reason he's sort of laughing his way through it and being really crude? Was she a great big fat person?
Yeah.
Is because he doesn't even see her as a person. Clarice as a person. And the way she tells it on the commentary is, it came to the door and it can't stop me.
Yeah.
And so when she tells him to freeze, he puts his hands up, but only
and he starts,
half-assed.
like, yeah.
And
he's laughing.
He just does his like a little dance twirl out of the room as he's dropping the business cards. And it's really like he's so obviously pumping for information. And Clarice has this intuition that this may be it here.
She starts looking around
And she's like,
and putting two and
this
two
is
together.
the guy.
Yeah. And when that moment where she sees the moth land on
Yeah.
the
It's
thread.
all over.
Yeah, it's so great.
And having to make that decision. She's there by herself.
Yeah.
Do you leave and get backup? Or do you just go for it?
Right.
You know, she's got to make a decision right then and there.
And
while-
she knows Catherine doesn't have much time.
When-
if there's
yeah.
a possibility
Yeah.
of her being alive, she's got to do something now, because if he feels like the cops are getting close,
Upstairs, in fact.
well, I mean, if she leaves the house,
Mhm.
serial killer is going to get rid of the body.
Right.
He's going to say, okay, I'm going to have, they found me out. They know where I am. I'm going to have
His
to
house may
scratch.
explode.
Right, I'm going to scratch this,
Yes.
and I'm going to start again new somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right.
So
And
she doesn't want to give him that opportunity.
Yeah.
So really, it is no choice
Yeah.
for Clarice. There is no world where
Right.
Clarice does not follow
If there's
him
a
down
chance
the
of
road.
Catherine being alive, she either walks out the door and Catherine dies,
Mm-hmm.
for sure, or she stays and she tries to do something about it.
And to be rather new at this and have to, in that moment, make that realization
Yeah.
that I need to do this now because
It's
leaving
the
means
only
we
chance.
lose.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the only chance Catherine has.
And you kind of get the feeling from him that he knows what's up,
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah.
you know? So I'm sure that was like, okay, I can't leave because he knows
Yeah.
that he pretty much can tell
This
that
is
I,
it.
Yeah. So she does her rather clumsy arming of herself, which
And-
I love.
And her walking through this.
Well,
this
she's pretty clever
basement,
to unclip her gun
Yeah.
Yeah.
while he's not paying attention.
The maze of a basement is horrifying. You see the
Yeah.
medical tables and the decaying body in the bathtub,
Oh,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
which
horrific.
we have to assume is Mrs. Lippman.
I'm assuming is Mrs. Lippman. He's experimenting
Mm-hmm.
and
Well,
maybe
and he has no interest in her body.
yeah.
No.
She is a means to an end.
Yeah.
I want the house. Let's get rid of you
Yeah.
slowly, and probably a whole lot of lie.
Yes.
Mhm.
A whole lot of it.
And then we get the night vision.
Yeah.
Which is the only real complaint I have. The real complaint is that we had to see him lit so brightly
Right.
when clearly not visible at all.
Yeah.
And I get why, because there really is no other way to do this. You know, if it's pitch black and his is the only thing we can see, there's no reverse angle, and we don't want the entire climax of the movie to be shot through green
It would
tinted
be
film.
it would be really long of just having the POV on her. Unless you could find something else to intercut with it. And if the entire basement is
Yeah.
in darkness, there really isn't anything. So it was kind of something they had to
They
do
had
just to break it up.
I mean, you could have maybe had little points of light, like little bits from a window that you can't really see, but maybe a hand. I don't know. I cannot think of a better way to do it, so I find it hard to fault the filmmakers for
Right.
not doing it better.
Sometimes you have to prop open that window of disbelief for a little
Yeah.
bit just because there really isn't a better way of doing it because you have to do it for the audience.
And I almost forgot, just before the lights go out, we see the body, we see the person suit
Yeah.
on a mannequin.
Oh, which is horrifying.
Yes.
Yeah.
and
that's gotta be one of the
the
horrifying
last
moments.
image.
Oh, no, it's
It's Ms. Littman. Is
yeah,
the
you
last
go
image,
see and
yeah.
you see the body, the saggy woman person suit that he's making over there, and she winds up in the bathroom
Right.
and sees,
Right.
and that's why it's horrifying. It's her in that bathroom, icky body in the tub, lights go out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the last thing she
Yeah,
sees.
that's the last thing Mrs. Lippman.
But then he can't resist touching her hair, and we get this feeling that when he
creepy,
kills
creepy.
it, he is going to take the hair because the hair is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about how you don't rack shotguns because it expels a bullet.
Yes,
Do you
yes, yes.
cock these guns, or can you just squeeze the
This
trigger and it shoots?
particular gun, you can just squeeze the trigger.
That's what
Yes.
I thought.
He did not have to
So the
cock it back.
only reason he gets shot is because he felt
He makes
compelled
sound.
to pull back the hammer on
Yeah.
the gun.
Which, again, it gives us a device
It does give us a device.
for her to turn around and be able to react.
Right.
If we didn't have that moment. So
Right.
we had to sort of fake something that you actually wouldn't do with the type of gun that he had. That particular gun, I believe they call it double action. You don't have to cock it back. But we have to just hope that people don't know that.
Yeah.
Or
Well,
think about it.
People don't
Most
care
people don't
because
care.
I mean, racking the shotgun, that's like the most exciting thing ever, and it's so pointless.
Oh, it's so pointless.
and wasteful.
Yeah, and they do that in this movie too. There's like a moment where apparently,
Was there a shotgun rack?
Yeah, there's some place in the middle where they actually they do like a pump, and it actually would have expelled the cartridge, not actually
It's like,
put it in the
well,
chamber.
great.
Yeah. And there's two gaffes on top of each other here, because not only do you not have to cock this gun to shoot it, because in the scene she's actually lit and it's done with the green light. When he brings the gun up, you see the shadow of the gun on her back,
which wouldn't exist in
if
infrared.
she was in pitch darkness.
But again, as with all of our complaints about this movie, they are actually pretty worthless and pointless because it doesn't matter, because it's brilliant.
We still love the moment.
Yeah. And when Clarice does that spin in slow motion and shoots him, the guns go off, and then we've got light, and that's so great.
She shoots the window.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one that the blackened out looks like it's been painted black, and that floods light, and when we get to see,
he doesn't look human there because he's got these gigantic goggles on, and he's in that pose where he's tucked his arms up and his hands are, it's really distressingly shot.
Yes, while he's
coughing up blood. Yeah. But it's such a great triumphant moment, and then we cut to that mobile of the butterflies spinning.
Yes, and I liked how the butterflies had two on one side and one on the other.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the duality of two halves becoming one.
Yeah. You have a nice moment to take it all in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then we see that bit of the scrapbook, the Bill Skins fifth. Yeah.
Exactly. We don't automatically leave this scene. We get a moment to sit and process it, almost like we're Clarice.
Yeah.
We have to sit with this.
Mm-hmm.
The reality
Until
of what this
reinforcements
is.
arrive.
Yeah.
And when the reinforcements arrive, they're everywhere. And Jack is there to help Clarice out. Like, yeah, you got him. Yeah. My plan worked.
Yeah,
see what I did there?
I love it when a plan comes together.
And I love how Catherine is holding on so tightly to Precious.
And they want to take the dog away. She's like, no.
Yes.
Mine.
She's a little freaked out.
This dog saved my life.
Exactly. She'll take care of Precious forever.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a great example of a movie not overstaying its welcome. We have the climax of the film, and then really we're 5 minutes from out.
Oh, yeah. We tip a bit of a hat to her scar that
she's
Hannibal.
got the scar.
Yeah, the gunpowder scar.
Mm-hmm.
The graduation is really sort of ethereal. We hear the Clarice Starling, but we don't see anyone, and she walks up and she gets her moment. And then we get the great little bit with the bug guys are back.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the generously huge
the biggest
that FBI logo cake. Oh my God, that woman serving, they better have like
a
10
ton of those.
FBI logo cakes
Yes.
back there, because you don't get that big of a piece of cake at a wedding.
No.
At your wedding, you don't get that big of a piece of cake.
If you get any cake at all.
That's true.
Other than the one that's shoved in your face.
And it's great that this is the moment Lecter calls.
Yeah.
Like, he knows he's congratulating her after he had to call a specific place there and time for this.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a letter in the book.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad it's not a letter here.
Yeah.
And it starts with the line that has been copied everywhere is, don't bother to trace the call. I won't be long enough. I mean, that's every single person calling starts with that. But I've no plans to call on your Clarice. The world's more interesting with you in it.
I love that line.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
And it shows the respect. It shows that Hannibal Lecter is a person with some kind of code of how he lives his life and deals with people. And I'm sure if Clarice wandered over to whatever South American country he's in at the moment and tried to arrest him, then maybe he'd have to think long and hard of taking care of it. This is you don't look me up, I won't look you up.
Exactly. And that's what I got.
It's a détente
out of this. It's let's just walk away from this.
Yeah.
I respect and admire you enough to not come looking for you. Can you extend the same courtesy to me as he is in his linen suit down there in the Bahamas?
Yeah. With his terrible wig.
Yes.
That's
so convincing.
That long blonde wig, that's I'm glad we really only got to see it for a moment.
Covered in that hat, that jaunty hat.
Yes, his Panama hat. And then there's the line that nobody will ever let go.
Oh, no.
I do wish we could chat longer, but I'm having an old friend for dinner.
And then we cut to Chilton.
Chilton getting off and questioning the guy about his security protocols. It's like, okay, we have a security area. Man, that Chilton outfit, too.
Yeah.
His blazer with the Hawaiian shirt under it. Ooh.
He's ready for vacation.
Oh, man, this last shot where we just see Hannibal following him into the group of people, and it's not a beautiful day in paradise. It looks like it's stormy and windy, and it just goes on as credits begin to roll. And I love that kind of ending where the credits are rolling over an image that's moving, because unlike Manhunter, where I was so hoping in Manhunter that they would just be hanging out on the beach for the entire credit sequence. And instead we get 10 seconds of hanging out on the beach and then freeze frame. So at least, thankfully, in this, we don't get that freeze frame. Instead, we get a fade to black midway through the credits. And we get the reprise of the very beautiful and haunting Silence of the Lambs theme.
Yeah.
And it's such an iconic way to end, because this monster is just walking away into a sea of people, and we will never see him again unless he wants to be seen.
Exactly. We get that feeling of him slipping through your fingers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Clarice just saying, Dr. Lecter, Dr. Lecter, because she has no idea what else to do than try to get him to go to respond to her. Because she's on the phone and he's clearly going.
He's gone.
Yeah.
There's nothing she could do, but I guess it's just, and I think it's also her shock.
Yeah.
Of I can't believe this is happening. He's actually, and she knows he's already gone, but to have him contact her, I think that she was really kind of taken aback by that, not expecting it. Because there's been a little bit of time, since all this is wrapped up.
At least a couple months.
Yeah.
So, according to my timer, we've just given you about 4 hours of reasons why we love Silence of the Lambs.
What I find funny about this is a little over 4 hours ago when you mentioned, did you see the tweet? Somebody wants us to
asking us for a 4 hour.
And we laughed.
We're like, no way.
4 hours? Nah. No, we didn't get 4 hours.
But there was a lot to talk about here.
I think that says a lot about how well made this movie is. That we couldn't come up with this much with the other two
Complaining
movies.
Will only take you so far.
Exactly. Whereas, and it's not even just heaping praise. It's every moment has something that is a brilliant piece of filmmaking or a brilliant way of dealing with your limitations.
Yeah.
The spectacular performances that were going on all over the place in this film.
There isn't a weak link in the movie.
Really is not. Everything from innovative coverage to dealing with lighting in an interesting way, doing unconventional special effects for what, for all intents and purposes at this time, was being thought of as a horror movie. There's so much here that bears dissection and inspection. Filmmakers need to look at a movie like this.
Oh yeah.
So that we don't get some of the other stuff that we've seen. But I think you need the right people, the right vision.
This was a movie that came together at a singular place in time. This movie would not have been made this way any other time in any other incarnation, because as we mentioned, there were so many possible ways this movie could have been made, and then just narrowly it just got funneled into this very, very odd combination of a comedic director who was raised making Roger Corman movies.
Yes.
to this masterpiece of suspense and horror.
It was created organically.
Yeah.
If all the pieces and all of the outside constraints and variables weren't present, if they had free range, if they had any actor they wanted, if they had unlimited budget, if they had, all these, all this support, they probably wouldn't have made it this way.
And it's funny.
It wouldn't look like this.
The great horror films in history are very much like that.
Oh, yeah. I was just thinking of that.
Psycho was put through such a horrible process to get made. And, even with the greatest director, one of the greatest directors who ever lived behind it, they took everything from him trying to get him to stop making it, and he made it, and it's amazing because of it. Halloween is very similar. They really didn't give any support. There was no backing for John Carpenter to make this brilliant example of horror cinema, and he did.
Yeah.
And really, I think horror is one of those genres that really thrives in the margins. And it's true of Hannibal.
Yeah.
Without being one of the lowest rated shows on TV, it would never have been allowed to do what it did.
Yeah.
The only reason we could get a season with the Florence arc is because nobody cared.
Right. Sometimes the more backing, the more focus on it, and the more it's geared towards success, the least likely you are to actually, you may obtain success, but you're not going to obtain creative brilliance.
Right.
And the list of creative brilliance is all a listing of films like this, or overcoming adversity. I've brought up Jaws before.
Oh yeah.
How a brilliant piece of horror filmmaking comes out of.
If their special effects had worked, the movie would not be as good.
Awful. It would not have been as good.
Yeah.
The fact that they used your subconscious and music and everything else, that worked, and but that was not their original intent.
Right.
And everything from things being cast in a different way, a studio not caring enough so that the artists that are in there sort of have free reign. As you're saying with Hannibal, is usually where this comes about.
And this is Orion, which was a smaller studio.
Oh, it went bankrupt after.
It went bankrupt shortly after, It took the goodwill from Silence of the Lambs and promptly ran the company into the ground.
Yeah. And it did amazingly well in the box office.
Yeah.
It did really well, but the success came too late. They were already...
It came out on Valentine's Day 24 years ago.
Yeah. It's amazing.
It is.
And it was supposed to come out in November. Because when I saw that, we looked at the trailer, and I saw February. Wow, they had no confidence in this movie, because usually you put out all the crappy films in February. It's sort of the way release usually goes. And then in the interviews, I found out that it was slated, I think, for November, but Dances with Wolves came out, so they pushed it. There was some
probably for the best.
Yes, exactly.
Get out of the way of that. And they picked Valentine's Day because they figured a horror movie would make a great date movie. Yeah, and they do make great date movies because nothing makes you squeeze your partner's hand or leg more than
grab their
jump
arm.
Scares.
Yeah.
And there are no jump scares in this film.
No, there's not.
Which is another. But
suspenseful.
And I think this shows us, we've harped on it enough, poor Red Dragon, but this shows us exactly what happens when you do have the resources and try to create this thing again. It's not creatable again. Yeah. There is no way to do that again.
It was a perfect storm of situations.
Yeah. And it's in the nature of sequels too. Even though it's not technically a sequel because it's the prequel, but once you have the perfect storm happen, everyone wants to recreate that. And
everybody seems to miss the point of what it was.
Yeah.
And that's really the issue, is even Thomas Harris missed what it was.
Oh, yeah.
Because Hannibal, the book, while I really enjoy it, is a mess, and it doesn't fit with what came before it.
Yeah.
And so it's like everybody took all the wrong lessons from this film when they went forward and tried to apply them. You know, the slate of serial killer movies that came out after this,
Yes.
it's some of the most appallingly bad made for Cinemax type films.
Well, everyone wants to capitalize.
Everyone does.
Oh, I could do it. I could do it. No, you can't. But a lot of times it's just they don't even care that they're making quality.
No, they don't.
It's like, oh, if you just,
They're printing money.
Yeah, pretty much. Exactly.
So we're going to leave you here just over 4 hours. And we're probably going to talk less about Hannibal next week.
Exactly.
But I can't promise, you know. Kate Kolzik is joining us next week to talk about Hannibal. So we're very excited to have her back, especially since she has not seen Hannibal.
Oh,
she has only
that's
seen
interesting.
Silence of the Lambs.
Oh.
So when we were talking to her about coming back on the show, it was like, well, what would be the best bang for the buck here? And I really didn't want to slot her into Hannibal Rising.
You didn't want to inflict that upon her?
Because I want her to
want to
like
inflict that on
the other Hannibal work. You know, I want there to be that, oh, I see the appeal.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing about Hannibal is I see the appeal.
Yeah.
And there are problems, significant problems in the film.
But nothing
Nothing like Red Dragon.
Red Dragon. Yeah.
And Hannibal is a better film than Manhunter. There, I said it. And this one I'm not taking back.
Oh, I don't know.
It is much better.
And again, it's one of those things where it's like, I can't compare it.
Well, come back next week to listen to us talk about that.
And have that argument.
Because I'm sticking by it. And we're not recording these out of order. So I would be very...
Are you going to stick by it? Like
I would be very surprised if I changed my mind. Very, very surprised. So, Miko, where can they find more about you online?
At Technogeisha on Twitter, Miko Technogeisha on Facebook, technogeisha.com.
Ophelia.
They can find me at Ophelia Tesla on Twitter and opheliatesla@gmail.com.
And I'm CooperSBeckett.com and at CooperSBeckett. And you can find all of us on the Swing Set FM network and lifeontheswingset.com. You can also find my book at mylifeontheswingset.com. You can find this show, well, even though there's only seriously 3 episodes left, unless a miracle happens. And the debatable nature of that miracle, because I still stand by this show should be over. You can find it at eattherudecast.com. And on Twitter at Eat The Rudecast, and on Tumblr at eattherudecast.tumblr.com.
Yeah. And don't forget our Facebook page.
Oh, damn it. Finally remembering Tumblr.
You forgot.
And just go ahead and search Eat The Rudecast on Facebook, and you'll find it.
You'll find it.
Honestly, just type that bad boy into Google, and you can find all sorts of stuff.
All sorts of stuff.
Use your Google foo.
So thank you, as always, for joining us at the table for this very, very long, it's sort of like an Italian dinner, like a extended, it starts at
multi-course
4 and
feast.
Yeah, and which is fitting because next week we're going to Florence.
Yeah, so go take a nap.
And Muskrat Farms.
And we'll